Scheduled meeting of April 10th, 2018. Madam Clerk, please do the roll call.
Mr. Weddleton.
Here.
Mr. Rivera.
Present.
Mr. Steele.
Here.
Ms. LaFrance. Here. Mr. Trainey.
Here.
Mr. Dunbar.
Here.
Mr. Croft. Here. Mr. Peterson.
Present.
Mr. Constant.
Here.
Ms. Demboski.
Present.
Mr. Dyson.
Here.
Chair Trainey, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Ms. LaFrance, would you listen to the pledge, please, ma'am?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ma'am. We have 2 minutes of previous meetings. Mr. Dunbar, I'd like a motion to approve the minutes of February 13th and February 27th.
I move to approve both sets of minutes.
Second.
Any objection to approval of the minutes? John, any objection to approval of the minutes?
No objection.
Ask unanimous consent. See no objection, Madam Clerk. Those minutes are approved. My thanks to the clerk staff for getting them into us quickly. We appreciate it. Mayor's report. Chris, I hear you're going to do the mayor's report.
Mr. Chair, thank you.
That does not mean you're getting promoted.
No, I don't want the job, actually. I had the fortune to be at an event with him, and he is at a movie right now, and he'll be here shortly as soon as it's done. But the movie was a celebration of our very diverse community at the Century right across the street with youth from East Anchorage, the Boys and Girls Club, the Mountain View Boys and Girls Club, the Fairview Rec Center, funded on a charitable drive by the Anchorage Community Land Trust to take kids from kind of poorer neighborhoods to see Black Panther. So my message to everyone from him is Wakanda forever.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Somebody's chair's report, I've got 2 items. Mr. Demboski, would you come here for a minute, ma'am?
What is this?
Five-year pin, ma'am.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Steele, come here for a minute.
Are you going to hug too?
What's that?
Here's your 5-year pin.
But I've been for 15.
I've been only with the assembly for 5. The other
We're celebrating 5 good years.
Congratulations. Committee reports. John, we'll start with you.
We met, the Community Economic Development Committee met last week, and you'll see 2 marijuana licenses that we reviewed at that meeting.
Anything else, sir?
It's very nice here in outside of Atlanta in Decatur, Georgia. I'm here for a walkability conference, learning some of the opportunities and constraints on how we can spend federal highway money. It's very interesting.
John, when you call in on the phone, please tell us it's thunder and lightning and snowstorms. We don't want you to enjoy where you're at.
Sunny and beautiful here, just like Anchorage.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rivera, sir, your committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Assembly Committee on Homelessness will be meeting on April 18th in the Mayor's Conference Room from 11 to 12:30 p.m. The big topic will be sort of a first look at the point-in-time count conducted in January, which is the yearly count, that we get to really get a look at the homeless population in totality. And then the week after that, yet to be scheduled, but I hope to have a joint committee of the Assembly Committee on Homelessness and Public Safety to continue tackling the 880 ordinance. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Last night I was at the Rogers Park Community Council. One question came out. They'd like to know if we can provide them a map that shows all the homeless camps in Anchorage. So if you could bring that to the administration, we'd appreciate it. There's some community councils who want to know exactly how many homeless camps do we have here in Anchorage, and the city has to have a map somewhere that shows where they're all at. So they'd appreciate getting that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll bring that to the administration.
Mr. Steele, sir.
I was just saying they changed. They moved. Nothing to report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. LaFrance, ma'am.
Nothing to report. Thanks.
Mr. Dunbar, sir.
No committee report, but a brief moment of personal privilege, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say Just very briefly, we're going to have a much longer discussion about this, I think, at our next meeting when the election is officially concluded and it comes time for us to certify it. But I just want to say thank you and congratulations to the clerk's office and everyone there that did such tremendous work, and the other Department of Elections folks that did work. Some people from the state came and helped us as well. It was a remarkable success in a lot of ways, certainly not without some hiccups, but I was down there, as I know a lot of my colleagues were. I went down to the election center many times in the last week, and just amazing the amount of work that they accomplished. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We know, Forrest, they received over 80,000 ballots, and that is incredible for a turnout of that size. Vote by mail is doing what we wanted to. It's allowing a lot more people the chance to vote. And there's some things we do need to try and perfect for the next one. I'd like to see us be able to send stamps out so the people wouldn't have to try and figure out what a stamp is. I was approached by some millennials that don't seem to know what a stamp is anymore. So I think if we send them out with a stamp on it, there's less chance of them saying, I couldn't vote because I couldn't find a stamp. Mr. Croft, committee assignment?
Yeah, the Public Safety Committee will meet on April 18th after the homeless will be meeting at 12:30 to 2. There's some confusion about whether it'll be in room 155 or the mayor's conference room on the 8th floor, but we'll announce that as we get closer. We'll be have invited the Criminal Justice Commission, most likely Suzanne DiPietro and Quinlan Steiner, the public defender, maybe others. Meant to do that earlier. We got kind of a lot of issues we had to address, but they'll be talking about the basis for and some of the data on SB 91 and 54 and some of their other work.
Thank you, Mr. Croft. Mr. Peterson, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Ethics and Election Committee met on March 28th at our election center, and we went over the last-minute preparations for the election, and everything was pretty much in order when we were having that meeting, and I think things have gone fairly well since then. We also had a discussion about an ethics situation, and so we've got an ordinance that's being introduced that would allow the removal of people that are on boards and commissions for cause. Right now, the only way that they can be released from those commissions and boards is for attendance reasons, and so we've added additional causes for removal. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Constant, sir.
Yeah, thank you. The AMAT's Policy Committee met in joint session with the Technical Advisory Committee for a work session on the alternatives, the draft alternatives for the 2040 MTP, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. And the discussion really kind of discussed the polemics of, do we just drive high traffic volume at high peak traffic times, or do we work on alternatives that are kind of transit related and other ways of people moving around to ensure a system that functions fully for the city, for our residents. And so the conversation was enlightening and is well underway, and keep your ears and eyes peeled. Go to mtp2040.com if you want to study up on it.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Nabowski, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. By way of disclosure, there's an item on the agenda for introduction, item 9F2. It's AR number 2018-105. Just in the realm of making sure I'm fully transparent, this is a resolution appropriating $58,205,472 of COP proceeds to the police and fire debt service. I have absolutely no idea what type of impact my husband would be in that. I don't think there would be any, but he is a member of IAFF Local 1264 and a member of the fire department, so I do make the disclosure for you and the body to rule on any potential conflict.
Thank you, ma'am. It's a ruling of the chair, consistent with the ethics board. You don't have a conflict on this item. It's too de minimis.
Thank you.
Mr. Dyson, sir.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Mr. Whittleton, I'm going to go to you first once I get them to incorporate the agenda. Mr. Dunbar, please make a motion to incorporate the addendum to the agenda with the agenda.
Move to incorporate the addendum to the agenda and any laid on the table items.
With the agenda?
With the agenda.
Thank you. Moved in second. Is there any objection? John, any objection?
No objection.
The objection from the body, ask unanimous consent. Madam Clerk, we've adjusted the document in front of us without amendment. Now I'm going to go to those items to be pulled for a little further discussion. John, I'll start with you.
Nothing this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to pull item 9 Alpha 2 for reading.
Okay.
No items, Mr. Chair.
Ms. France.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to pull 9 Alpha 7 for reading, 9 Bravo 1, and item 9 Delta 17.
She'll pull 3 items, ma'am. Okay. Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to pull item 9 Alpha 5 for reading and also item 9F1.
What was the other one you pulled, 9F1?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Croft?
9 Alpha 3 for reading and 9 Delta 25.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to pull A6, 9A6 for reading. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Constant?
Thank you. I would pull 9A4 for reading, as well as 9B2, 9 Bravo 2.
9A4 and what else?
9B2.
9B2? Okay. Okay.
Don't think so.
Ms. Dabowski, ma'am.
9 Alpha 1.
Okay. Mr. Dyson?
9 Echo 3.
Okay, let's go through these.
Mr. Chairman, the city manager is in the queue.
Who was? Oh, city manager? Sorry, go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chair, the Assembly is requesting to pull 9F2 as we realize that item is no longer necessary. We went back to the originating ordinance and it already contained sufficient appropriation language.
So 9F2?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we've got 9A1 was pulled by Ms. Dabowski, 9A2 is pulled by Mr. Rivera, 9A3 is pulled by Mr. Croft, 9A4 is pulled by Mr. Constant, 9A5 was pulled by Mr. Dunbar, 9A6 was pulled by Mr. Peterson, 9A7 was pulled by Ms. France, 9B1 was pulled by Ms. France, 9B2 was pulled by Mr. Constant, 9D17 was pulled by Ms. France, 9D25 was pulled by Mr. Croft, 9E2 was pulled by Mr. Dyson, 9E3 was pulled by Mr. Dyson, 9F1 was pulled by Mr. Dunbar, 9F2 was pulled by Mr. Falsey. Is there anything else anybody wishes to pull? Okay. We'll vote on the acceptance of the agenda as amended.
Mr. Chairman, do I need to read the items, or is that after?
You can read it right now if you want. You could do it either way.
Well, it's not a question of whether I want or not. When do we need to do it?
We normally read it now. Go ahead.
Okay. I didn't want to do this. We have to do this because
He likes to be heard.
I know.
Go ahead.
No, this is just one of my duties. All right. So, the consent agenda. Item 9 Bravo 2. Actually, do we need to read this now, Mr. Falsey? Now that we've pulled this, do we need to read it?
9F2, no, we do not. I should also mention, if I can, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. It's 9 Bravo 2.
Okay. We will also have some late on the table items tonight as the first quarter budget revisions hot off the presses are also ready to be set for a public hearing. We can do that after we do the addendum item, or we can do it now, whichever is your preference.
I'd like to see it now so we can incorporate it to the agenda.
I'll start reading the addendum now.
Read it now, if you would.
So item 9B2, resolution number AR 2018-111, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly extending the expiration date of the limited alcohol beverages conditional use permit with special conditions for a restaurant eating place approved by AR 2015-261S as amended for AK Alchemist LLC, doing business as AK Alchemist, holder of liquor license number 5367, located at 103 East 4th Avenue, Anchorage, AK 99501, and setting a public hearing for Assembly-initiated review of the permit, Downtown Community Council Assembly Chair training, accompanied by item 9B2A, information memorandum number AIM 35-2018, disclosure regarding AR 2018-111, communications with AK Alchemist LLC regarding Assembly review and action on AR 2015-261S as amended, Assembly member Constant. Item 9D26, Assembly memorandum number AM 244-2018, 2018 Mayor's Community Grant to Anchorage Economic Development Corporation for the purpose of operational fees in the amount of $247,800. Office of Economic and Community Development. Item 9F6, resolution number AR 2018-110, resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly stating its protest pending a public hearing and final action on the renewal of package store liquor license number 3219 for Lee Family Corporation doing business as Mom and Pop's Grocery and Liquor, located at 601 West 36th Avenue, Suite 3 and 4, Anchorage, AK 99503, and authorize the municipal clerk to take certain action. The public hearing set for 4/24/2018, accompanied by item 9F9A, Assembly Memorandum number AM 243-2018. Item 9F7, ordinance number AO 21831, an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code, Chapter 4.05 to amend Section 4.05.060, listing how vacancies may occur on a board or commission, and to add a new section providing more efficient and appropriate procedure for the removal of an appointed municipal board or commission member for breach of the public trust. Assembly Member Constant, public hearing 4/24/2018, accompanied by 9F7A, Assembly Memorandum number AM 245-2018. Item 9F8, ordinance number AO 2018-32, an ordinance of the Municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, authorizing a ground lease for certain real property of the Municipality of Anchorage, authorizing a facility lease, and authorizing the Chief Fiscal Officer to determine the manner of financing certain municipal light and power expenses of the municipality, and delegating to the Chief Fiscal Officer approval of final lease rates and terms, Finance Department, Public Finance and Investments. Public hearing 4/24/2018, accompanied by 9F8A, Assembly Memorandum number AM 246-2018. Item 14I, is it an I or an L? Do we know? I'm going to assume it's an I. 14I2, information memorandum number AIM 34-2018, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving a marijuana license and special land use permit for Alaska Wild Coyote, Inc., a marijuana cultivation facility with license number M12125, doing business as Alaska Marijuana Gardens, AMG, and located at 838 Bonanza Avenue, Planning Department. Wait on the table items. Item 9F9, resolution number AR 2018-109, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage revising and appropriating funds for the 2018 general government operating budget for the Municipality of Anchorage, Office of Management and Budget, public hearing 4/24/2018, accompanied by 9F9A, Assembly Memorandum number AM 241-2018. Item 9F10, ordinance number AO 2018-29, ordinance setting the rates of tax levy, approving the amount of municipal property tax, and levying taxes for all service areas of Municipality of Anchorage general government for 2018. Office of Management and Budget, public hearing 4/24/2018, accompanied by 9F10A, Assembly Memorandum number AM 242-2018. Item 9F11, ordinance number AO 2018-30, an ordinance setting the rate of tax levy, approving the amount of municipal property tax, and levying taxes for the Anchorage School District for tax year 2018. Office of Management and Budget, public hearing 4/24/2018. Assembly accompanied by 9F11A, Assembly Memorandum number AM 243-2018. Item number 9F12, resolution number AR 2018-112, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage revising and appropriating funds for the 2018 municipal utility enterprise activities operating budgets. Office of Management and Budget, public hearing 4/24/2018, accompanied by 9F12A, Assembly Memorandum number AM 250-2018.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Is there anything else anybody would like to pull?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Dombrowski?
it seems most of us don't have any of the laid on the table items.
I don't either. All I've got
So-
now is a copy of what they're going to be giving us tonight. And these are set for public hearing the 24th,
So
Madam.
sorry, you kind of sound like Charlie Brown's teacher when you get going. So I missed it. Are they just items for introduction?
These are just items for introduction.
There's no resolutions?
No.
Okay, I'm fine with keeping
These
going.
are items for just introduction.
Thank you.
Here. You can check it. Here.
Isn't that a resolution?
No, but look at the hearing.
Okay.
Public hearing, public hearing, public hearing, public hearing.
Yep.
Okay?
So is it time for me to make my motion to amend?
No, wait till we're done with this, and we will. Okay, we're now going to vote on the agenda as amended, acceptance of it. John, you're first.
Yes.
Okay. Please vote.
Oh, my gosh, hold on, it won't let me, there we go.
That is approved. The vote was 11-0. Now, Chris, I need your motion right now.
Thank you. I would like to move to amend the order of the day to take up items 9A4 and 9A5 first.
Need a second. Ask unanimous consent. John?
Yes.
See no objection. That's approved, Madam Clerk. So the first item in front is going to be
Mr. Chair, Mr. Wilbur's in the
9A4.
queue.
What, sir?
Mr. Wilbur's in the queue.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
on your late on the table items in the packet that you had, the one for the utilities is not in your packet. I did not bring that for you this evening. I will bring that for you on the 24th. The urgency is not tonight because it will not affect the mill levies, so we'll bring that to you for your meeting on the 24th.
Thank you, sir. We may have to come back and get this in a bit. Let's get the appearance requests done now, though. Item 9A4 is first.
So,
Item 9A4 was pulled by Mr. Constant. Mr. Constant, I'll need a motion on that.
move to approve.
Need a second. Ask unanimous consent. See no objection. John, your vote?
Yes.
Okay. That is approved by the body.
All right. A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing the Anchorage Comets.
Let's get the comments down here.
Come on down, ladies.
Come on down.
Okay, we'll start over. All right. Okay, ladies, here we go.
Here we go like this because we're not.
A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing the Anchorage Comets U10 Schlee, S-E-H-L-E-E, all-girls hockey team, and celebrating their championship in the 2018 Anchorage Hockey Association City Tournament. Whereas the 2018 Winter Olympic Games were held in Pyeongchang, Korea, and the United States of America celebrated the gold medal victories of both Keegan Randall, who led the U.S. cross-country ski team to its first gold medal victory, and the USA women's hockey team, whose ice hockey gold secured the first Olympic title since 1998, inspiring and serving as a model to all female athletes, and particularly in Anchorage, to the female hockey players. And whereas the victory of the USA women's hockey team, Olympic hockey team, is an indication of how far women's hockey has come in the United States and in Anchorage. Many young athletes begin their skill development through programs such as the Anchorage Hockey Association, whose legacy is to help prepare athletes for life-setting goals, developing leadership skills, promoting teamwork and fair play, respect for others, and giving back to our community. And whereas the 2018 AHA City Tournament Championship game was played on February 5th, 2018, and the performance of the Anchorage U10 Schlee, S-H-L-E, Comets all-girls team throughout the tournament, outscoring their opponents by a total of 23 goals for 2 goals against, earned them a place in the championship game and then the victory. And that was against the boys' teams. Now therefore be it resolved that the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizes the Anchorage Comets U10 Schlee, S-C-H-L-E hockey team, Abigail Blevins, Madison Brittain, Evan Deneen, Hazel Foos, Grace Gastrock, Lily Lemaire, Amelie Loki, Brooklyn Reed, Elizabeth Sharp, Sherilyn Simber, and celebrates their championship at the 2018 AHA City Tournament, honors their dedication to their sport, and thanks the Anchorage Hockey Association and all the volunteer coaches and parents for making these youth sport programs available in the municipality of Anchorage. Passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly on this day.
right, you can go ahead.
Okay.
Right now?
Yep. Okay. For the record, my name is Elizabeth Sharp, team captain. Chairman Trini, on behalf of our team, I want to say how much we appreciate the honor you are giving us today. For the record, my name is Hazel, FUHS, assistant captain. Who we really want to thank is our coaches and our parents, who have stood behind us every step of the way. Could our coaches and manager please stand up so they can be recognized? For the record, my name is Brooklyn, REID, assistant captain. Yes, we fight hard to win every game, but our coaches are also teaching us to be fair and to respect the other players, coaches, and the referees, which is just as important as winning. Mr. Chairman, again, thank you for this honor, and we will always do our best to make you proud of us.
Thank you for being here tonight. Congratulations.
Nine A5.
Yes. Next item in front of us is item 985, Resolution Air 2018-98, a resolution of the Anchorage Assembly recognizing and honoring Alaskan Olympian Keegan Randall's historic gold medal win at the 2018 Winter Olympics game in South Korea. Need a motion to approve that?
Move to approve.
Need a second?
Second.
Ask unanimous, including you, John.
Yes, yes, yes.
See no objection, Madam Clerk, that's approved.
All right, I will be reading and Mr. Constant will be presenting. Whereas Keegan Randall was born on December 31st, 1982 in Salt Lake City, Utah, moved to Anchorage in the mid-'80s, graduated from East Anchorage High School, and as East Anchorage High School's own, won 10 state titles in track and cross-country skiing. And whereas, to further distinguish her achievements, including 17 U.S. national titles, 3 World Championship, and 29 World Cup podium finishes with 13 World Cup victories, Keegan is the first American female cross-country skier to race to a top 10 finish, to win a World Cup race, and to dominate the sport with World Cup Sprint Crystal Globes in 2012, 2013, and 2014. And whereas Keegan has competed in 5 Winter Olympic Games, including the 23rd Winter Olympic Games in Pyeongchang, South Korea, to which the United States sent our most gifted athletes, with a record-breaking 15 athletes representing Alaska on Team USA. And whereas during the 2018 Winter Olympic Games, Keegan Randall and teammate Jessica Diggins became the first U.S. athletes to win a gold medal in cross-country skiing with their victory in the freestyle team sprint. And whereas Keegan was the only mother competing for Team USA, and with her gold medal victory at 35 years old, continues to serve as a role model for many Alaskans who have followed her accomplishments from East High School's own to a time when she was the only woman on the U.S. Olympic cross-country ski team, blazing a trail for other female athletes and putting the spotlight on Alaska Pacific University as the premier cross-country skiing training program in the United States. And whereas since 7th grade, when she joined Young Adults Taking Action and continuing as the American Director of Fast and Female, Keegan has taken a leadership role in promoting gender equality in sports. And she now embarks on a new role, an 8-year term on the International Olympic Athletes Commission, representing the athletes to ensure that their viewpoint remains at the heart of the Olympic movement, decision-making. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizes Keegan Randall for her thrilling victory at the 2018 Winter Olympic Games and thanks her for inspiring generations of Alaskans with her prowess as an Olympian athlete and her Alaskan spirit as an Anchorage hometown hero. Passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this 10th day of April, 2018.
Wow. Thank you, Chairman Trainee and Anchorage Assembly members for this incredible recognition. My career has spanned quite a while now, so you must be an endurance athlete as well to be able to recite all of that. It's a great honor to be here together with these athletes that are just embarking on the beginning of their career. I really credit growing up here in Anchorage in a very supportive community with tremendous recreational opportunities that not only put me on the competitive track, but really instilled a love of being healthy and active, feeling confident that I could go out and chase whatever dreams came along. And it feels like it's been a flash, but it's been an amazing adventure. I love all the memories, the places I've traveled, the team I've gotten to be a part of, the many teams I've gotten to be a part of. And now I'm looking forward to embarking on some new journeys. So I will be watching you guys. Torch is yours. Thank you.
Ma'am, Mr. Constant has a question.
Not a question, but Mr. Weddleton couldn't be here, and so he wanted to reach through the telephone, and if you look over by his spot on the die, he owns a comic book store, and he had a one-of-a-kind made for you, so please pick it up on your way out.
That's awesome.
Thank you. That's amazing.
Thank you very much. If you want to, she's got time.
Does she?
She has time.
What? Oh. Okay.
He wants to walk down there.
Yeah.
Back to A1 now. We have in front of us item 9A1, Resolution Air 2018-74, Resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing April 2018 as Safe Digging Month.
Move to approve.
Second.
As unanimous consent, you too, John.
Yes.
See no objection, Madam Clerk, that is approved. Who's reading and who's presenting?
I'm reading.
Okay.
If somebody's here to accept
And who's
it.
here to receive it?
Come on down. A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing April 2018 as Safe Digging Month and encouraging all citizens to spread awareness about safe digging practices and to always call 811 before digging. Whereas April is nationally recognized as Safe Digging Month and serves to promote public awareness about the importance of calling 811 and digging safely. Whereas each year, Alaska's underground utility infrastructure is jeopardized by unintentional damage, which may cause undesired consequences, such as service interruption, damage to the environment, and potential personal injury. Whereas the rate at which Alaskans hit utility lines is 3 times greater than the national average, and so local and statewide efforts to increase awareness of 811 and safe digging are necessary to prevent damage to the underground utility infrastructure and to ensure public safety. Whereas 811 was designated as the national call before you dig number in 2005 as an active free service in the municipality of Anchorage that dispatches utilities to locate underground lines at the subject property, and whereas placing a call to 811 at least 2 business days before digging, respecting the marked lines, and hand digging with the tolerance zone greatly reduces the risk of hitting a utility line. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Anchorage Assembly hereby recognizes April 2018 as Safe Digging Month and encourages all citizens to spread awareness about safe digging practices and to always call 811 before digging. Passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this 10th day of April 2018.
Thank you. If I just may for 1 minute, it doesn't quite have the same ring as Olympic gold, but I guarantee you that safe digging and 811 is a critical issue. It's a public safety matter, and just in the short time I've been at NSTAR, I've seen major roads closed down, I've seen elementary school evacuated, and I've seen equipment catch fire. So it very much is a public safety matter. It's the law to call. It's a free service, and I can't tell you how much we value this partnership with our state and local officials to encourage citizens to call, to create awareness, and thank you, Chairman Traney, the Assembly, Mayor Berkowitz, for partnering with us once again.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Dyson has a question. Mr. Dyson?
Actually, I don't. I have a comment.
Okay.
The system works very well. And a phone call and all of the utilities will show up. It's gas, power, and telephone. And they're darn good at what they do. And there is a significant downside that not only inconvenient accidents and so on, but you can incur significant costs, which I'm sure will influence some of you. Most of my life I've spent getting in trouble with a crane getting into power lines. In recent years it's been backhoes and bulldozers into gas lines and so on. None of those, some of those can be life-changing experiences. I do not recommend any of them. And I just want to emphasize how well the system works, and it's really dumb not to. And there's a huge downside for not following this very rational process. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. There are no other comments, but thank you, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Take care. Next item in front of us, item 9A2. Resolution AR 2018-9, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly honoring YWCA Alaska and recognizing April 23rd to the 29th as Stand Against Racism 2018. Mr. Rivera, I think you pulled that, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Ask unanimous consent. You include too, John.
Yes.
See no objection, Madam Clerk. That is approved. Who's presenting and who's receiving? Do we know?
Okay. A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly honoring YWCA Alaska and recognizing April 23rd through 29th as Stand Against Racism 2018 week. Whereas YWCAs in America and around the world have a rich history of advocating for racial justice, guided by the one imperative to eliminate injustices in employment, education, healthcare, housing, human services, and other areas that affect the quality of an individual's life, and to eradicate the barriers that divide us and that perpetuate racism and other forms of oppression. And whereas the YWCA is dedicated to eliminating racism, empowering women, and promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all, and in 2008 initiated the Stand Against Racism movement in order to build community among those who work for racial justice and to raise awareness about the negative impacts of institutional racism in our society. And whereas civic engagement is most meaningful when the full spectrum of civic life is valued and it is used as a powerful tool by disenfranchised groups to eliminate racism and help create a more representative democracy, as highlighted in the Stand Against Racism 2018 theme, Our Power, Our Mission, Our Future. And whereas, since 1989, the YWCA Alaska has been part of the international YWCA movement, which serves more than 25 million women and girls in over 100 nations, has participated in the National Stand Against Racism event since 2010, and will host a Stand Against Racism 2018 community event highlighting racial healing through art, open mic, and featured performances at 7 p.m. on April 25th at Willowa, 609 F Street. And whereas the YWCA Alaska will collaborate with organizations and individuals throughout Alaska to host a variety of Stand Against Racism 2018 events April 23rd through April 29th, and invites the community to participate in Stand Against Racism 2018 activities in Alaska. Well over 2,200 organizations and 300,000 individuals will be participating in activities nationwide. And whereas the effectiveness of our American society, the strength of the state of Alaska, and the vitality of our Alaska communities like Anchorage depend on the success of organizations such as the YWCA Alaska. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly honors the YWCA Alaska for its dedication to eliminating racism and empowering women in the Anchorage community and throughout the state of Alaska, and recognizes April 23rd through 29th as Stand Against Racism 2018 week, passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this 10th day of April 2018.
I just want to say that we're really grateful for the Assembly's support, and I hope that folks show up. My name is Justin Zagorski. I'm the Social Justice Program Manager at YWCA Alaska. The rest of our team's out moving toward our mission. But we appreciate the support of the Assembly, and I hope folks show up for the events, join in the dialogue, and help move forward and help us eliminate racism. So thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for being here. Next item that was pulled was Resolution 983, Resolution AR 2018-100, Resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing April 2018 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month and encouraging the residents of Anchorage to support community efforts to raise awareness and to work together to eliminate sexual assault crime in our community. Mr. Croft, you pulled that.
I'd move AR number 2018-100.
Second.
Moved and seconded. John?
Yeah.
Okay, ask unanimous consent. Seeing no objection, Madam Clerk, that is approved.
I'll be reading. Great, and Suzanne's.
And who's receiving it? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, before I begin, I served for 5 years on the STAR board, and so I appreciate the being asked to read this. Whereas to increase awareness and education in support of victims, Sexual Assault Awareness Month was first observed nationally in April of 2001, with the hope that recognition would build momentum to help prevent sexual violence. And whereas sexual assault is a public health concern that subjects victims to debilitating, immediate, and long-term physical, psychological, social, and financial issues, threatening critical societal structures and resulting in lost contributions, achievements, and income that cannot be fully measured. And whereas since October of 2017, as part of the hashtag #MeToo movement, the hashtag phrase has been posted by brave women and men millions of times via social media with accompanying personal stories of sexual assault or harassment in order to bring awareness to the prevalence of sexual violence. And whereas according to a report by the United States Department of Justice, 1 out of 4 women and 1 out of 6 men are victims of sexual assault, and according to a 2016 Alaska Department of Public Safety report, roughly 37% of women in Alaska have experienced sexual violence at some point in their lives. And whereas the mission of the State of Alaska Department of Public Safety Council on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault is to provide safety for Alaskans impacted or victimized by domestic violence and sexual assault through a system of statewide crisis intervention, perpetrator accountability, and prevention services. And whereas in 2017, Standing Together Against Rape, STAR, an Anchorage organization committed to supporting Alaskans affected by sexual violence, responded to 1,990 crisis line calls, 257 reports of rape and sexual assault, and 310 reports of child sexual abuse. engaged in 40 one-on-one support sessions, and provided 313 people with court accompaniment. And whereas in April, STAR will support several local events to raise awareness and focus on the prevention of sexual assault and gender violence, including the 7th annual Survivors Ball at Mad Myrna's on April 14th, Denim Day on April 25th, and Walk a Mile in Her Shoes on April 28th at the University Center Mall. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizes April 2018 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month and encourages community members and volunteers to continue to work together in our community and across the state for the prevention of sexual violence. Passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this 10th day of April 2018.
Welcome to the meeting, ma'am.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Keely Olson. I'm the Executive Director of Standing Together Against Rape, also known as STAR. Thank you, Assemblymember Croft, for your service when you served on the board of STAR some years. Thank you to the entire Assembly for recognizing April as Sexual Assault Awareness Month. We have a lot of activities going on throughout the community. Several of them are happening that are not organized by STAR. We have a 5K run on the J-Bear campus. We had an event on Friday at the University of Alaska Anchorage campus. There are a lot of events happening. We also have a crisis line responder training that is starting up on April 27th. So people who are interested in receiving intensive training in crisis intervention, learning how to respond to disclosures of harm for both adults and children, understanding how to protect and save evidence, understanding options for reporting. I think that it's critical that people understand that the time frame for reporting sexual assault and collecting forensic evidence has recently changed. Within the last month, we increased that time frame from 96 hours to 7 days. That will increase reporting options for everyone across the board. So we're very excited about those options. We're excited about creating change in our community. For the last 30 plus years, we've had the highest rates in the nation. And we have a very active community prevention team that goes out to the Anchorage School District, provides personal safety presentations to children, presents information to over 10,000 community members throughout Anchorage. And they just came back from a national conference in Chicago. And we're clearly impressed that a lot of our policies and procedures are on the cutting edge. But I think this has been a long-standing problem. It's going to take a while to change that tide, but I'm very encouraged by seeing some of the other folks who were recognized this evening, the female hockey team, and to be able to have their photo with Keegan Randall. And having those people to look up to, I think will eventually help stem the tide of the epidemic of sexual violence that we have in this state. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. There don't appear to be any questions from some members, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
This one in front of us is going to be, let's see, pull Mr. Rivera. 96. 96 is Resolution Air 2018-103, resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly celebrating the designation of April 18, 2018 as National Lineman Appreciation Day and recognizing the vital public service of electric utility personnel. Mr. Rivera, you pulled that, sir.
Mr. Chair, I actually didn't pull it, but I'm more than happy to move to approve.
Second.
Oh, second,
Good.
okay.
Ask unanimous consent. You too, John?
Yes.
See no objection, Madam Clerk, that's approved. I'm sorry, I had somebody else's name written. Sorry about that. That's approved. Who's reading and who's presenting?
I'm reading.
Who's presenting?
I'm not 100% sure.
Mr. Dyson, do you have it down on your end to present to it, sir?
Here we go. Okay. A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly celebrating the designation of April 18th, 2018 as National Lineman Appreciation Day and recognizing the vital public service of electric utility personnel. Whereas the vocation of line worker is steeped in personal, family, and professional tradition where service, safety, reliability, and sacrifice are fundamental. And whereas line workers are dedicated public servants who answer the call of duty 24 hours a day, every day of the year, performing their vital work in often the harshest weather conditions. And whereas the essential services provided by Municipal Light and Power, Chugach Electric Association, and Matanuska Electric Association line workers, together with other employees and utilities, play a vital role in our community. And whereas line workers stand ready for being first responders in keeping the power on and protecting public safety. And whereas national, state, and municipal governing bodies across the United States have joined the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association in designating April 18th, 2018 as National Lineman Appreciation Day. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Anchorage Assembly thanks and recognizes all electric utility employees, but particularly line workers, in celebrating April 18th, 2018 as National Lineman Day. Passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this 10th day of April, 2018.
Gave me wooden job 100 years ago. I really respect you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair, my name is Julius Matthew. I'm a journeyman power lineman. I work as a business representative for Local 1547 IBW. I'd like to thank the Assembly for recognizing these men and women that work in the line trade today. This trade, as you know, is inherently dangerous. Day to day, they climb poles, work with heavy equipment, drive trucks, and work exposed to the traffic, and of course, work with high voltage. Then you throw in a blizzard with high winds, and it gets really exciting after that. They're called upon, when they're called upon, these men and women go out in some of the worst conditions in the middle of the night to put the power back on, and they don't stop until that's accomplished. And I would really like to thank you again for the recognition. Thank you.
We have a few questions from Assembly members, if you don't mind. Mr. Steele?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At an attempt at full disclosure, I am a recovering lineman. I was school trained in the Army and spent 2 tours in Vietnam trying to keep off a pole, so I wasn't a target. But I certainly appreciate what you do, and I too have fallen from a 30-foot pole. So,
thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Mr. Constant has a question.
Yeah, thank you. Also, just a point that, it speaks here in the resolution about the call of duty 24 hours a day, every day of the year, performing their vital work in often the harshest weather conditions. It's like Christmas Eve when that happens, when your family is all ready to celebrate and tucked in, and everyone else in the whole city and state is ready to do the same, and you guys are the ones that get called out to do the job. And for me, I personally want to thank you because I recognize that it's always at the most inconvenient time when that happens, and you're there. So thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for all you do, because people just accept for granted when they throw the switch, the lights come on, and without you guys being out there, that would not happen. We take it for granted, and thanks for all the work that you do, keeping the power coming into the homes in this town. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
The last 82 a day will be item 9A7, Resolution AR 2018-104, resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and honoring David Bullock. And Mr. French, you pulled that for me, ma'am?
Yes. Move to approve.
Ask for a second. Ask unanimous consent. You too, John.
Yes.
Okay. Seeing no objection, Madam Clerk, that's approved. I'm going to present to David if you're going to read.
I'm reading. A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and honoring David Bullock. Whereas David Bullock was born and raised in Anchorage, Alaska, and is the youngest of 7 children, and whereas in 2011, David graduated from South Anchorage High School, where he was a very active student, participating in student government, organizing blood drives, and an all-conference member of the varsity basketball team. And whereas at the age of 23 years, David became known professionally in the digital world as Alaska when he founded the 907 Agency, a digital marketing company with the area code of our great state as the namesake. And whereas under his leadership, the 907 Agency has serviced clients including Spotify, Nike, Warner Music Group, Bad Boy Records, Lionsgate, and Atlantic Records, as well as other clients including Grammy Award-winning musicians, professional athletes, and some of the world's most influential public figures. And whereas at the age of only 24 years, David is on the brink of new ideas, setting a standard for what's hot and what's not through social media with posts that trend worldwide. And whereas David has been profiled in the Huffington Post and in GQ magazine and has appeared on BET and on KTUU News, and whereas David now spends a significant amount of his time coming back to Alaska annually to inspire young Alaskans to stop being lazy and work hard to accomplish their career dreams. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Anchorage Assembly recognizes and honors David Bullock for his outstanding ingenuity and for representing Alaska and the municipality of Anchorage with such amazing career accomplishments at such a young age. Passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this 10th day of April, 2018.
For the record, my name is David Bullock, and I'd like to thank Chairman Traney and the Anchorage Assembly for this honor. I've had the pleasure of returning to Anchorage to give my time speaking to high school students and serving as an inspiration that they can break the mold and thrive in the entertainment industry. I'm currently developing a music industry simulation mobile game with fellow Alaskan Mitchell Bustamante, and having the support of the city has been monumental in our continued efforts to pave the way. None of my successes would be possible without our city's educators, legislators, law enforcement, and everyday heroes. This award is not for me. This award is for every pupil who has a vision of becoming something great, both in the state of Alaska and beyond. I've received numerous accolades. However, this resolution will be held dearly to my heart. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Jones, could you come down to the microphone for a minute? You can't escape. We saw you here. We want to talk to you. Well, a resolution coming forward, thank you, but I just want to, how did it go?
Well, things are going pretty well. We posted some new results tonight. I believe it's 78,848 ballots have been counted. We have a couple more days left, but the mail is trickling in, only about 25 ballot envelopes a day. But we have issues that we're resolving. We mailed letters to over 500 voters, and we asked them to come in, sign documents, make sure that their signature matches. And so we're getting those letters. We're getting about 25 a day. So if you've gotten a letter or a phone call or an email from the clerk's office, we'd really like people to come in and take care of that. And we have the public session of Canvass on Friday at 5:30 at the Election Center. And after that, we'll run the final results and bring them to you on Tuesday and ask you to certify.
So you said we've counted 78,000, 79,000?
78,848.
How many more do we have left yet that you have not counted? Any?
Not very many. Probably, it's all of the ones that are pending, those 500 or so that are waiting for voters to get back to us with signatures or question ballots that we couldn't find people in the database, or they'd move from one location to another location. So that's all that we have left that's pending.
Well, thank you so much, Barbara. Question from Assembly members.
Just a big thank you. A huge thank you. I've followed the process pretty closely, and it's a really tight ship they're operating, and it was impressive to witness. Thank you.
Mr. Dyson.
Yeah, thank you. Well done. I'm impressed with how you adapted to some changing things that were going on, setting up places where people could go vote in person, places where they could drop off their envelopes, and a whole bunch of other adaptive things like that. My guess is we will find out in ensuing months. This may have been one of the best launches of a vote by mail program of anywhere in the country.
Wow.
I'm often wrong. I don't think I'll be far wrong on that one, but you deserve the credit. And I think you had some amazing people working with you, and to whatever degree I can, we want them to know that it's noticed and appreciated and very significant. And thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Dyson. Thank you very much.
Mr. Peterson, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to say congratulations. I mean, we've been working on this for 3.5 years, I believe.
I believe so.
A member of the Ethics and Election Committee for 4 years myself, and we started talking about doing this shortly after I was put on the committee, and now I've been chairing that committee for the last 2 years, and it's great to see a plan come together. And so I just want to say congratulations and keep up the good work, and maybe it'll even go better next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. I'd like to say congratulations to our voters. That's, I think, where the kudos go.
We know, Barbara, there are a lot of older people that have not been able to vote because they couldn't stand in line or they didn't drive. But I heard from a lot of people, 80 and 90-year-olds, that were actually voting for the first time in a long time. They appreciate getting the ballot in the mail. That they could do. They could sit around their dining room table and decide what they wanted to do and send it in. So it worked out well, Barbara. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Mr. Traney. I think our statistics bear that out. There are, as you know, we had a number of voters who we didn't have reference signatures for, and those were voters who haven't voted in the last 3 municipal elections and the state general election. So we were surprised to see a number of those voters, and there are people that haven't voted since 2014, and they're coming back, and they have stamps.
I was talking to an assembly member from the Mat-Su today and said, we might want to do that. So I said, we got the equipment. More than happy to contract with you. So anyway, thank you, Barbara.
You're welcome, Mr. Traney. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving back on our consent agenda, we have item 9B1, Resolution Air 2018-101, Resolution of the Executive Assembly stating its protest regarding the transfer ownership of restaurant/eating place liquor license number 5191 with restaurant designation permit for John Bond Group, LLC, doing business as Noodle World. Melissa France, you pulled that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move to change the order of the day to take up 9B1 after the public hearing, which is 14F. And my understanding from talking to Ms. Honest is that 9B1 continues the actual protest and contains the directions to the clerk's office, and we need to have the public hearing first.
So after 14F, ma'am?
Yes.
Any objection to change the order of the day? John, do you object to change the order of the day?
No.
See no objection, that's done. Thank you, ma'am. Next item in front of us is item 9B2, pulled by Mr. Constant. That's on your addendum agenda.
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
So 9B2 is the resolution authorizing the extension of extending the expiration date of the limited alcoholic beverage conditional use permit for AK Alchemist, but for the purposes of this discussion, I would like to make the disclosure on the record that I had ex parte contact with the petitioner as listed in the amendment that is 9B2A that was incorporated, and it's all detailed there. The nature and time. There was one additional text communication that I omitted off the list inadvertently, and that was just the text saying, hey, can we get together? And so I wanted to put before the body the question of whether or not I should deliberate on this item or the item that follows, which is the earnest conversation that was introduced as an item, I think, 9F5.
You said 9F5?
I believe. That's from memory. I don't have it in front of me.
Do you think you have a conflict of interest, Mr. Constant?
I don't. My concern was the appearance of impropriety and the idea of having ex parte contact in a quasi-judicial role is something that I needed to be very clear and make disclosure about. I didn't know at the time that it was ex parte because this is a rare document. It's not a liquor license. It's a conditional use that was limited in short term. So, but as soon as Monday rolled around, I spoke with the Assembly Council and worked out the disclosure and made the disclosure properly.
Ms. Dembowski, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Being the former chair of our quasi-judicial panel, it's not unusual for quasi-judicial items to come before the body. This is when the body sits in basically a judicial capacity where we're deciding something. So unlike a traditional disclosure, it's important for the member to fully disclose whatever that ex parte communication may be. That way the body can deliberate on whether that would cloud their judgment or if they made any promises on behalf of the body. That has to be fully vetted. So if I may, Mr. Chair, I'll just ask a couple of questions.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, and this will give us our basis for our determination. So first thing, Mr. Constant, did you offer or were you asked to provide anything as, let me rephrase it. Were you asked or did you offer to provide any official solution, or did you promise any official solution as far as assembly action on this item in front of us?
I offered, they didn't ask, to send an email to the folks, the clerk's office, to the chair, and to Assembly Council that would ask to initiate action. So I did that much. I didn't make any promise or suggestion of a vote in any direction on any matter other than what happened was 90 minutes before close of business, on the Friday before the expiration of the license, he received an email that said your license is technically expired. And that to me was shocking because I believe that someone should have enough time to respond. And so the only promise that I made was that I would send an email to engage this communication.
Right, and in no way did you tell them what the result of assembly action would be, or what, you didn't promise them anything like that?
I have no idea what this body is going to do, so no, I didn't make any promises. And in fact, we didn't get to the merits of the license or renewal or anything. It was literally just the process by which this action here is before us.
Mr. Constant, do you believe you can be fair and impartial with this item in front of the body?
I can. I just don't know if, from the public's perspective, it can be seen as fair and impartial because of ex parte contact.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Dembowski.
Through our experiences with all these quasi-judicial hearings, it is my view that Mr. Constant has fulfilled the obligation of the Assembly member to fully disclose that ex parte communication or potential ex parte communication. In no way did he discuss the merits of the underlying issue. It sounds more like a process issue. So from that capacity, I would say I don't believe he has a conflict and he should be allowed to participate.
Thank you, ma'am. Other comments from Assembly members?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Dunbar.
Sorry, my screen isn't working properly. For me, it's not the. I mean, you hit on this, Chris. It's not whether or not you can be fair and impartial, which I'm completely confident in your ability to do so. It's the appearance of impropriety from the public. And I know in the other portion of our code, when it comes to conflict, that is one of the criterion. Ms. Dembowski, is this For ex parte communications, is it a similar set of criteria or is it a different set of criteria? Does public perception, is it one of the lined out criteria?
Well, I have to tell you, there is a reference to it, but it has to, in my view, that's why I had him vet through the questions. There has to be a basis for a determination that he promised them something. He went over to their house and had pizza. He's a frequent visitor at their home. I'm not getting that sense from him at all. So a lot of people could say, for example, somebody twice removed, there could be an appearance because they went to the same church, but we can't arbitrarily just say, well, there could be an appearance issue, so everybody's excluded. I think there has to be a basis for that. And from my view, what he's disclosed, I know he was concerned about the appearance issue, that's why he disclosed it. But I just don't see it, especially because they never discussed the merits of the case at all. He basically just sent an email saying these people were never notified that their license was going to expire. What's up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
To Assembly Legal Counsel, Becky, you sit on the Ethics Board. Your view, ma'am?
So I have 2 points. One is on the ex parte contact issue, I think the disclosure is appropriate and fulfills. There is no specific directive in code about how to cure ex parte contacts in a quasi-judicial context, specifically in front of the Assembly. There is that directive for other boards and commissions, and there the cure is full disclosure and a determination that there was no interference in the process. There isn't that specific directive with respect to the Assembly. In this instance, I think the question is slightly different. Again, it is this question of whether there is an appearance of impropriety, if the nature and the extent of the contact might potentially impugn the decision eventually made by this body. So I think it is a judgment call, and based on the question of whether there might be a more generalized appearance of impropriety. The language, again, governing appearance of impropriety in the ethics code is somewhat general. It basically says the appearance of impropriety standard is preempted by any specific language of the code, but it doesn't further plumb the idea of appearance of impropriety and how it's determined. It's more discretionary. So I think it is up to this body to determine, and Mr. Constant to determine whether or not there may be an appearance of impropriety resulting from his continued participation.
Thank you. Mr. Croft, sir.
Mr. Constant, this license is in your district, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and so we're balancing important considerations of fairness to the individual licensee and public trust in the process. And I think the disclosures accomplish that. We should recognize on the other end is this is the sole representative for this area. And so we have important considerations on one end, we have important on the other, in that if we say this communication means you can't vote on it, a whole group of neighbors has lost their voice on it. I think that Ms. Domboski is right that the disclosure is important, but I think the disclosure here and what we've heard about means he should be allowed to vote.
Thank you. Mr. Constant, sir.
Thank you, and I have been ambivalent on the question, pulled one way, pulled the other, and that's why I'm clearly appealing to you for a decision.
Thank you. My decision is you don't have a conflict of interest on this. You've disclosed it to us. From what I've heard, you don't have a conflict on this. I want you to vote on this issue, sir. Thank you. Now, we do need to vote on 9B2. It was moved and seconded. Comments from anybody? If not, let's vote. John?
Yes.
It's up on the screen. Please vote. Mr. Croft, I need you to vote, sir. The keeper of the vote said you weren't in yet. Did you vote, Eric?
I didn't vote, and I apologize, Mr. Chairman, but I thought we didn't have a similar motion to move this after the conditional use permit.
If I may, Mr. Chair, what's going on here is what's being moved is an extension of the review period so that 9F5 can be deliberated. The question of do we extend this matter, and that's in 2 weeks.
May 20.
Is it? Okay, May, I don't know the exact date. 9F5.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I was concentrating on the conflict motion. No, I'm behind, but I'm catching up. So this is simply to move it.
This extends the time for the individual because the time has run out.
Okay.
And it'd be good for us to hold a hearing on this to allow people to comment on it.
Thank you.
That was approved 11-0. We still have someone we have to hear from before 6:30. So let me finish the next one, then we'll go to that. We have in front of us next would be item 9D25. What? 9D17? Okay. 9D17 is some memorandum AM 240-118, change your number 2 to PO 2017001816 with Peloton Group, Inc., to provide SAP application support to the municipality of Anchorage, Alaska.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Dunbar, comment?
No, we can hear from the administration. I don't believe this is new money.
It's not.
I pulled that one.
Yeah.
You what?
And I pulled that one, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead,
and
sorry,
have
Mr.
some
Brown.
questions. Okay. And yes, if we could hear from the administration on a couple questions.
Yeah, I think they.
Just to confirm, I understand that this change order for $1.15 million would be funded out of 2018 operational expense out of the SAP budget, which we approve with the budget at $7.43 million.
Thanks. Through the chair, Ms. LaFrance. This is operating money from 2018. Yes, all we're doing is extending the term of their contract so they continue working through the end of June.
Okay, thank you. Two more questions, just real quick, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I understand, Mr. Harris, that a long-term support model is being developed for SAP post break fix. And would you be able to say when we might see that support plan and how, after this transition period ends, it may be funded?
Thank you. Through the chair, Ms. LaFrance. So, yes, we are giving consideration to what the support model looks like after we get through the application development stage, which essentially is where we're at now. We're getting the program to work. When that happens, probably sometime in the late third or sometime in the third quarter, fourth quarter, when we'll have some models out there after some discussion internally about what that would look like for the municipality.
Okay, so by the end of the year, we should know how we're going to maintain and support SAP and have an idea of the cost?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, thank you. And a final question.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How much have we spent on consultants so far for this year in 2018?
Thank you. Let me see if I have somebody who knows the answer to that. Well, do you know the answer? I don't think I have the answer right offhand. I'll have to find that answer and get that back to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Harris.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else, ma'am? Mr. Constant on this issue?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so Ms. LaFrance kind of hit on the line that jumps out at me. This offers the MOA opportunity to continue resolving existing issues while transitioning to a different long-term program support model. I would appreciate a brief narrative on what that model, what we're doing. What's the transition?
Thank you. Through the chair, Mr. Constant. The long-term support model would be how we maintain and support SAP for the organization in the long run. So we're still working on different models. Right now, as I've said before, we have a model that includes about 9 or 10 staff who are directly in the IT department, as well as SMEs who work throughout the municipality, plus consultants who help us. And I think one of the questions we're asking is what's the best balance for us into the future that achieves our ability to use the software efficiently and to get the most value from it, but also cost the least. So that's really what we're looking toward. We're looking to sort of sort out for ourselves what's the best model for the municipality so that we can use this program and get the most value out of it.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from Assembly members? If not, please vote on this item. John, you're first.
Yes.
Please vote. That's approved 9-2. Next item in front of us will be item 9D25.
Move to approve.
Croft.
Oh, wait, just a minute.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm going to bifurcate. Mr. Chair, I'd like to bifurcate this item and separate out Croft Wholesale License Number 5149.
Which one is that, ma'am?
Again, it's liquor license number 5149. It's called Croft Wholesale. I want to bifurcate that, separate it from the rest of the group.
Okay. Is there objection to bifurcation of the issue? John, do you object to it?
No.
Say no objection. We've approved that. We now have two issues in front of us. One is the original one, and the other one is license number 5149.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move all of them except for license number 5149.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the rest of the licenses but that one? Seeing none, let's ask unanimous consent. John?
Yes.
From the body, ask unanimous consent. See no objection, Madam Clerk. That is approved. We now have 5149 in front of us, Mr. Dombrowski.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move to approve. And then
Mr. Dombrowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe Mr. Croft has a disclosure to make, so before we take any action, I'll go ahead and
Mr. Croft, sir.
Why are y'all looking at me? On Croft Wholesale, it is my parents' license, and they use it primarily to bring up wine. They have a vineyard in Oregon, and they sell wine to shops and restaurants up here. I don't have any ownership interest in it. I don't think it makes money, but I don't really know. But anyway, it's associated with me, but I have no ongoing financial. I sometimes buy the wine, but at relatively retail
Didn't you
prices.
see the eclipse there at their property?
Yes, I did.
Obviously,
And
you
that
have
was-
an interest.
I was very interested in the eclipse, but not financially interested in the other hand.
Mr. Croft, I don't think you've got a conflict of interest on this.
I have a question.
Mr. Bowski?
Because I might disagree. This is owned by his parents.
Yeah.
So I do want to ask, I don't want to get into the valuation of the business necessarily, but Mr. Croft, we do have to ask, since this is a liquor license that's owned by your parents, could you potentially be a beneficiary of this particular establishment or this particular entity?
Sure, I would imagine that I have one brother and one sister, so I imagine the three of us would inherit it. Yeah.
Based on that, Mr. Chair, I know it may seem de minimis. I don't know what the valuation is of the company, but because this is owned by his parents and he potentially could be a beneficiary of this liquor license, I would ask that this be put on the board, or if that's not your ruling.
We can put it on the board. That's not a
because
problem.
I personally am, I believe he has a conflict.
Okay.
If you're going to vote on it, I mean, guess I just assume not have that cloud. You may very well be right, Mr. Chairman, but it doesn't seem worth the fight. So I'd rather not vote if any member thinks that it's a possible conflict.
I think at least one board member does.
Sounds like it, yeah.
Can I just clarify?
Go ahead, ma'am.
It's not a negative thing. It's just Mr. Trainee and I see it a little bit differently. So anytime, I don't want to move to overrule the chair. I'm just asking, rather than do that, just put it on the board because I personally think you have a conflict. But it's not a negative thing, I don't think.
Any other comments on this? Let's put it on the board. We need a second on that from Mr. Bowski.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Please put on the board that Mr. Croft has a conflict of interest is the judgment of the body. Please put it up there. John?
No.
Okay. Put it up, man. Please vote.
And the question is, does he have a conflict?
There is a conflict.
I think it's a yes. I think it's a yes.
Who's not voted?
Steele.
What?
Steele.
Mr. Steele? You need to vote. Yes?
I got it now.
You got it now? Okay. The vote is 4-6. Mr. Croft, you do not have a conflict on this item. So let's deal with 5149. There's already a motion to approve on the floor, I believe, Madam Clerk, and a second. Okay. Please vote. No. You're directed to vote. This isn't Juno.
You better not.
Mr. Wilton? We're approving liquor license 5149.
You say yes?
John, which way do you vote?
Yes.
Okay. That's approved 11-0. Okay. Next item in front of us, and I do want to get to the gentleman, we've got to get this one done quickly and go on to the next one. It's item 9D1. Mr. Dunbar, you pulled that.
It's 9F1, Mr. Trainee, but do you want to
9F1.
let the speaker go first
Sorry.
and then do that?
No, I'd like to get yours done.
We have 9E3.
9E3, okay.
Echo 3.
Clerk reminded me we got another one. So let's bring the gentleman up that's going to speak to us. We've got a few more to do there. So we go to item 12 on your agenda. This is Paul H. Reich regarding helicopter noise over the Rogers Park neighborhood. Welcome to the meeting, sir.
Thank you, sir.
And he's got a handout for us. The clerk is distributing right now.
Okay, do I start now?
Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, Chairman Trainee and fellow Assembly members and Mayor Berkowitz. Thank you for allowing me to come tell our story.
Could you pick the microphone up, move it closer to your... There, thank you.
My wife and I moved into Rogers Park subdivision in 1977, raising 4 children in this neighborhood. In the last few years, a problem has developed over our neighborhood consisting of touch-and-go operations of small helicopters, primarily the piston-driven Robinson helicopters. This type of helicopter is extremely noisy when operating over our homes. The noise created by these helicopters is cutting into the quality of our life and the possible property values. Robinson Helicopters addresses the noise complaints in their manuals, saying to pilots to improve the quality of our environment and to dissuade overly restrictive ordinances against helicopters, it is imperative that every pilot minimize noise irritation to the public. Irritation's their word. They gave out 5 suggestions, and that's in handout 1. But the number 3 one, it says always fly over 500 feet and preferably 1,000 feet. Number 4 says repetitive noise is far more irritating, there's that word again, than a single occurrence. If you must fly over the same area more than once, vary your flight path. The Helicopter Association International, HAI, recommends that 500 minimum isn't good enough, that they want 1,000 feet. Neighbors of Rogers Park have met with the Merrill Field staff and the owner-operators businesses of these craft on multiple occasions at Merrill City Hall and Alieska Helicopters hangar. Our assembly member or members were present for these meetings, and it seems that progress was being made, yet this seems not to be the case any longer. I will say that one operator, Alieska Helicopters, listened to our concerns and has stopped all touch-and-go operations over our neighborhood. Other operators seem not to care about this, and this brings me here tonight. Merrill Field has published a master plan and noise study with a finish date of December 2016. The noise study does not reflect our current situation. The helicopter noise issues in the mentioned plan does not address the noise issues of the last 5 and 6 years regarding these helicopters. Concerns about the master plan led Rogers Park Community Council passing a resolution regarding the Merrill Field master plan on May 9th of 2016. Fairview Community Council also passed a resolution in 2013 about the noise study. That's in handout 3 and 4. Merrill Field has adopted a fly-friendly program and a helicopter protocol system, handout 5, which worked for a short while, and then it flew out the window. Merrill Field could be a better neighbor with suspending all helicopter touch-and-go operations over our neighborhood, in fact, over all residential neighborhoods. FAA personnel has informed us that there is another helicopter hangar and fuel dump in the works at Merrill. which will make this issue more problematic for our neighborhoods. It appears the helicopter numbers are going to increase. This noise issue is countrywide. We respectfully request that measures be taken to stop the touch-and-go helicopter operations on runway 1634 flying over our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Constant, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I apologize, I didn't get to call you back the other day, Friday evening when we spoke, but I had a conversation with him about this. He called to inquire about Fairview. I would like to hear from Mr. Bowers, though, about his kind of thoughts on this question. He is here.
Bauer here?
Yeah, he is. The manager of Merrifield is here.
Probably want to move a little bit to the side. Thank you. Welcome, sir.
Good evening. My name is Paul Bowers, Airport Manager for Merrifield. The problem of helicopter noise is indeed a problem on a nationwide basis. What we have done at Merrifield has implemented a voluntary operating protocol for helicopters that essentially has them land and take off on the north-south runway, which overflies Rogers Park, only when the east-west runway is not available. And that is generally when we have a 9-knot crosswind on the east-west runway, or we are doing maintenance on the east-west runway. Additionally, we set up a protocol with Bryant Airfield on Fort Rich that is available for us on a prearranged basis for helicopter touch and goes only when they have a tower in operation, which is 8 to 4, Monday through Friday, when it's not being used for military operations or when it is not available because of maintenance or crosswind ops. Additionally, we have set up we actively enforce the Fly Friendly program, and I pursue each pilot that I'm aware of and counsel them on flying friendly. And often the refrain I get is, well, who's here first, the airport or the homes? And I said, almost invariably, it is the airport. But your point is moot. How many residents are there? How many pilots are there? And if you want to continue being a jerk, then expect some type of governmental intervention to make it more onerous to fly. The FAA has jurisdiction of all aircraft in the air, not Merrifield. We have control when they're on the ground. The FAA does in the air. This is a protocol, what we have developed, considering the Fly Friendly program, the operating protocol, and the arrangement with Bryant Airfield is significantly more than what you'll find at, to my knowledge, any other airport in the country. Additionally, we have implemented a voluntary curfew, and these are all voluntary because we do not have the wherewithal to mandate them. A voluntary curfew from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. for touch-and-go operations. Basically, it says you can have one takeoff and one landing per aircraft. You want to do touch-and-goes during the nighttime operations? Have at it. Just have it someplace else other than Merrifield. Anchorage International would be just fine. But that is going to be the closing statement of the tower when they shut down at night. We'll also have it on the ATIS, which is the advisory information for pilots when they're looking to get information on the airport. So I disagree with Mr. Reich that that program worked well initially and it has gone by the wayside. It is still actively pursued. We have a meeting on May 1 with the operators in the neighborhood, and we invite every aircraft operating entity on Merrifield to attend. How many residents show up remains to be seen, but we have sent that to all of the community councils, and it's an ongoing communication, and some folks are less than satisfied with what we're doing. It's almost always going to be the case.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Constant, question, sir?
That was from before, but I would note that when I spoke with Mr. Reich on Friday, he asked the question of have we had complaints from Fairview on this question. And while Fairview has long complaints about Merrillfield, and they've been thoroughly vetted here, I have never had a complaint about helicopters at Merrillfield. I have had complaints about helicopters off the hotel on 5th Avenue or 4th Avenue, but not at Merrillfield.
To administration, are you working with Mr. Reich on this problem? Mr. Falsey, the mayor?
Through the chair, or to the chair, we actually met with the Roger Park interested parties with the mayor earlier this week, and we invited them to the upcoming Merrillfield noise-themed meeting, which I believe is now happening. Let's see if Paul, you may have it top of mind.
May 1st, 9
May
a.m.
1st. I mean, we recognize that this is a community issue, and it is one that we try to bring everybody on the same page annually. So we, after the long winter, bring all the operators in and invite the community to have a conversation about this.
I would suggest, Paul, you show up for that one, Mr. Reich. That would probably be the best way to get a resolution on this. I know you have a problem. I've heard you've called me before and put the phone up so I can hear him. I know it's annoying. So I couldn't imagine living there with that noise. We've got to wrap up the time very shortly.
We have the shortest runway, the north-south runway, and when they're landing east-west, they got the 2-4. And so consequently, they have tons of commercial real estate they can fly over and take off on. Where Rogers Park is, we're at the other end of the north-south, and we just don't have that buffer that the east-west affords.
Mr. Constant.
It's some commercial property and also the trailer court that's there on the east-west runway. That is, it's citizens as well who experience it on that runway.
Okay. We'll have to keep pursuing this, sir.
Okay.
But thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Bauer. Getting back to our consent agenda, we have item 9E3. Mr. Dyson, you pulled that. Notice that collective bargaining negotiations have commenced with Public Employees Local 71. Need a motion to accept this, Mr. Dyson?
Move to accept.
Second.
Go ahead, sir, Mr. Dyson.
Yeah, thank you. So I have been communicating with the state on this issue. The basis of my concern is several of us have wanted to rationalize the division of road maintenance and snow clearing within a municipality. And what we have is a hangover from the old times before the unification here, and it's irrational and awkward, but it works on some level. To move towards a more rational, reasonable integration where the state just takes care of the roads that are interconnecting between communities, and we in the city can take care of our own. But there are real difficulties, and one of them is that when we get to the day of transferring the responsibility from one organization to the other, there are some of the equipment operators that work under a different union contract. So what I've asked our administration and the state to do is put language in the next contract that will provide a path for reconciling those position shifts when it happens. So I suspect that there would be a clause in the contract that says when the redistribution of the road clearing responsibilities happen, the union will not protest that or prohibit it from going forward based upon the union jurisdictions, and there'll be a process probably involving arbitration that will resolve those differences so that we don't have a contract precluding moving forward on a widely recognized process. So once again, I'm asking our administration to address that before it comes to us for action, as I have done with the state. Not to be negative, but I expect this to be ignored by both. And all I can do about that is talk about it, vote against the contract, and I swear to you that when the day comes when you all are able to accomplish a more reasonable system and it gets high-centered on this union contract, I'll either get out of my grave and yell, "I told you so, dummies," or send my designee to remind you. So, please.
Thank you, Mr. Dyson. Mr. Dunbar, on this item, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Trainee. So I think Mr. Dyson and I share a sort of passion for the topic of snow removal and for this aspect of it, and something we've talked a little bit about. I wanted to ask Mr. Dyson, though, it sounded like, perhaps I misheard you, it sounded like you'd actually secured an agreement from someone to look into this. Am I mistaken in that? Because at the end it sounded like you ended on sort of a sour note there, that you expect it to be ignored, but I don't really know why it would be.
And I want to be generous and fair. It has been ignored because everyone rolls their eyes and say, yeah, it should happen. And there are so many potholes and difficulties from getting from here to there that no one is wanting to take the effort and do it, now. So what I'm asking is the obvious, that we do not now put in contract what will be a barrier in the future. And the administration has not demonstrated to me any interest in it. They can't be against it, but it's kind of like a institutional rolling of the eyes and saying, yeah, it's a good thing to do, but it's not worth the effort now, and we've got a lot of higher priority issues to work with. I think a carefully crafted paragraph in the contract that commits both sides to not let this union jurisdiction issue slow down that rationalization process. I think we can get there. Your help will be helpful.
Anything else, Mr. Dunbar?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Constant, on this item?
Yeah, thank you. It's on the item, not on Mr. Dyson's point, a question to the administration, Mr. Falsey. I had a question from my constituency. What's the status of gravel removal and kind of the change from winter to summer? And it's kind of germane under this topic.
Through the chair, if Alan Chakowski is here, I might solicit his assistance on the status of gravel removal. If he is not, I will have to get back to you. I will confess, if I can return to the earlier topic, I am not aware which union does snow removal for the state. If it's L71, we'll figure that out. Otherwise, the L71 for the municipality only covers our seasonal gardeners and some of our parks caretakers. So it's somewhat surprised to hear this topic come up here, but we'll close that loop.
Yeah, if I may.
Go ahead, Mr. Dyson.
I'd be delighted to be wrong, because 71 is the laborers, and I may very well be wrong. My point's wonderfully taken, but the example I've picked may be errant. So, if so, please excuse the comments.
Thank you. Anybody opposed to accepting this item? Seeing no objection. John, do you object to accepting this item?
No opposition.
Okay. That is approved, Madam Clerk. Next item in front of us is item 9F1. Mr. Dunbar, you pulled 9F1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I do not intend to introduce this item, and I want to explain why, and I would ask my colleagues not to introduce it either. This is an ordinance that myself and Ms. LaFrance put forward relating to childcare. It grew out of a Women's Commission meeting in January or February, where a question was asked, could a single parent afford to serve on the Assembly? And the conclusion was, and Ms. LaFrance, please, supplement or correct me afterwards if you'd like, but the conclusion was, and Ms. LaFrance was on that panel, that it would be extremely difficult for a working person that's a single parent to serve on this body. And so this ordinance was trying to remove those kinds of barriers to service so that we could get some diversity of views up on this assembly, which, while I very much appreciate my colleagues, we don't really reflect the community perhaps as much as we could. Unfortunately, the perception of the ordinance has been quite the opposite. Rather than seeing it as removing a barrier to service for working people, it's been seen as rather a benefit for the people already serving, even though no one on this body actually qualified for the program as we designed it at this point, because no one has any young children. And for that reason, I'm not going to go forward with it. I'll say that the one positive thing that's come out of this, one of the positive things that's come out of this, and we've received a lot of feedback, and a lot of it was negative, and I have been listening and responding to a lot of those emails and comments. But one of the positive things that came out of this is the discussion about childcare and having childcare open to a wider variety of people. And I think that ultimately will be the solution, that we have something like universal childcare in this country, and it will become a more standard part of benefit packages for working folk. But we clearly aren't there yet, and this ordinance, as it was designed now, I don't think forwarded that in a productive way. So I hope to have more discussions on this going forward, perhaps a work session on the topic more broadly, but this ordinance itself I'd ask my colleagues not to introduce, and we'll let it pass gently into the night.
Well, sir, this was not introduced. We have no motion in front of us. It's simply not going to be moved forward. So we move on to the next item, which is item 9F2. Mr. Falsey, you asked us to pull that one, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Likewise, we'd like to let this one go gently into the good night.
Okay, good.
Dinner break.
We've got nothing else. That completes our consent agenda. We're now going to take a really scheduled dinner break. We should be back in about 20 minutes.
Mr.
Sir?
There was one item that was laid on the table and read in for introduction that we didn't have laid before us, and the administration told me that they don't need it introduced tonight.
Okay.
And that was 9F12, was it? 9F12. And so just so everybody's clear on the record, I believe that one was not introduced tonight, will be forthcoming sometime in the future.
That's fine. Thank you. Now go take your dinner break. Assembly members return to their seats, please. We'll get this meeting restarted. On your agenda, we're on item 11A, and the S version that carried with it. Mr. Dunbar? The clerk tells me we have a motion to approve on the floor. And then I have an amendment.
Okay. I'm waiting for some of our colleagues to rejoin us. Well, do you want to offer your amendment, Mr. Training? Because for me,
I'd like to get everybody here for the amendment.
Okay, well, we've had a lot of discussion on this, and members of the industry have come to this. So my intention tonight is we either pass it or we don't. We vote on the ordinance or we don't, and then we can settle the law for a time at least.
Okay. Is Mr. Dyson down there?
Mr. Dyson has not yet returned, Mr. Trainee. Is there anything else we could realistically take up in the interim, or?
No, we need to get them here.
Is Mr. Weddleton online?
John, are you online? Yes. Okay. He's there. Here we go.
Here we go.
Couple individuals we needed.
All right, Mr. Trainee.
Thanks. There's an amendment here, amendment number 1 to item 11A. I handed it out, or was handed out to you. It's from me. Basically, what this amendment does, it stops any new permits from being issued until the convenience and necessity study is done, which should have been done according to code a long time ago. So that's what this does. It will just keep the amount of permits we've got out there, because my fear is we're just flooding it. Do you guys remember years ago when down in the Kenai, there was a creek down there that got overstocked, 3 times the amount of salmon, and it was choking it so much that the creek was dying. So they had people come down, and you could take 100 fish per family. Most fish I've seen coming into an area, you walked across the backs of fish to get them out of the creek. And that's what we've done in the taxi industry. We've flooded this town with taxi permits. And that has to stop, because I see these people out there trying to make money. They're barely getting by, if they are getting by. And so that's the reason for my amendment. So I'd appreciate your support. I need a second on this. Guess it dies for lack of second. Is there a second?
Mr. Trainee, what's your amendment? I second. It's amendment number 1.
Amendment number 1.
Or Mr. Rivera appears here.
Agenda item 11A, amendment number 1. That basically the function of this will be to suspend any new permits until a convenience and necessity study is done by the city.
All right, I'll second that.
Felix seconded.
Felix seconded. Good. Thanks, Felix.
Mr. Chair, I really didn't second that. I don't know why my name is.
Well, I did, and I don't have any buttons. I haven't had any buttons all night, but put my name on for the second because I totally do support it and think we should deliberate it.
All right. All right, so I currently have the gavel. I'm not sure if I should give it back. Here, I'll give it back.
Give it back to me. I'll be nice.
I'm
Dunbar.
Yes, I'm going to speak against this amendment, obviously. So I put forward this ordinance in a hope to reduce some of the regulatory burdens on the taxi industry and lower fees on the taxi industry. I feel that the amendment you are putting forward is more appropriate for a separate ordinance that you yourself should do. And for those that weren't on the body at the time, we had exactly this debate back in 2016. It might have bled over into 2017. I think it was just 2016, on an ordinance sponsored by Mr. Evans. And that moved us gradually from a closed system with a limited number of permits to an open entry system over the course of a number of years. And that ordinance passed, and I voted for it. And the reason I voted for it is because I believe that the way this industry was set up in the beginning was a mistake, that the taxi industry should not have been a government-enforced oligopoly. It should have been open entry where, like a coffee shop or a hair salon, where if you can meet the health and safety standards, if you can own the appropriate kind of car and you can perform the appropriate kind of service, that the market
Keep it down, please.
should dictate whether it should be a license, not a medallion or a permit. Now, subsequent to that, certain members of the industry collected signatures and put a ballot initiative, again, on this exact question of whether or not we should restrict the sale of permits to the people of Anchorage, to the voters. And the voters chose, I believe, 60-40. I might be a little... Oh, thank you. 58-42, that we should not do what Mr. Trainey's amendment is asking us to do. And so while I do want the overall ordinance to pass, and I do think it will help the industry, I urge my colleagues not to support this amendment, and I'll let someone else speak now. Thank you.
Mr. Constant, sir.
Thank you. Two things you mentioned there, Mr. Dunbar. One, gradually, and two, competition. So it was just a couple of years ago when this thing was implemented, and there has been a not gradual change in the number of actual licenses out there and the number of people doing the business. And in fact, there's been an extraordinary loss of revenue for the individuals who are actually doing this work in this regulated industry. So the competition side of that, so first you say gradually, well, there's been no gradual, it's a train wreck. It's off the cliff. And then the competition issue, as you heard someone from the audience say, we have the TNCs which have shifted completely the base of competition. And so we don't have a competitive system for these individuals in this arena. And so the market has fundamentally changed more quickly than people who believe this was a gradual shift in policy. It's been an absolutely radical change. And I think it's fair to do the two things that are contemplated in this amendment. One is slow down the horses on the new permits until we've studied the question of what has been the actual impact of the change over the last 2 years since this was implemented. And so if you can see a 90% or 80% reduction of revenue on the side of these businesses in 2 years when you contemplated that happening over 6, then maybe we need to hold up a second, because this has been a crash. And so my suggestion is that we implement this amendment at this time as a stopgap measure so that we can analyze what has actually happened and not just go off of the kind of whim of we think it's been a gradual change and we're making things more competitive.
Thank you, sir. John, you're next.
Oh, thanks. I reiterate what Forrest said. We heard very loudly last year when voters opposed moving back to the closed system. So I can't support this amendment. I think it goes against the clear message of the voters. And, under the S version, we get away from allocation of the permit by studies of the market. Instead, we simply rely on the market to determine how many cabs there will be. Thanks.
Is that all, sir?
That's it.
Going back to this, my amendment, I appreciate the body would support it, because what we've seen is, I remember I was here in 2016, and the problem was what we ended up with was a screwed up system. You talk about health and safety. What health and safety do you have with Uber and Lyft? You don't know the criminal records on them, and they have no insurance. So let's not play this game. The state took this away from us. The state took this away from us as a body. This will at least allow us to deal with the people that are doing this for their living. You talk about taking their living away from them. None of us will have their living taken away from us, and that's what it's doing to taxi cab drivers. Let's stop the amount of permits going out there, because you're flooding the market. There'll be nobody left out there doing this. So please vote for this amendment.
Thank you. Mr. All right, you're going to have to Mr. Peterson.
Mr. Peterson.
Dick.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I believe there's been massive change since a little over a year ago when we passed Mr. Evans's ordinance. Uber and Lyft have come in, and other TNCs, and have swamped the market. And so many of our cab drivers are struggling to make a living. And I think we need to immediately stop issuing any additional permits. And I've even heard people suggest that we need to start buying back some of the permits. So I'm going to be voting in favor of this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Can you do me a favor? We don't allow clapping or yelling or hooting. So please, to get this forward, we need to have your help and cooperation. Mr. Dyson.
Yeah, thank you. Wish you'd have gotten this all solved before I got here.
We took a detour.
Yeah, and these are it's a textbook example when government gets involved in the economic sphere. The legitimate role of government is to protect people from things that they are ill-prepared to protect themselves for. Certainly safety is a major thing. I'm not weaseling when I say I agree with almost everything that was said here. The difficulty of extracting ourselves from this conundrum is really tough. I respect the job that Mr. Dunbar has done trying to work this through. He has more patience and probably brains than I would have brought to it. Obviously, the two wild cards here is when you all decided to go away from a limited entry system and significantly, I assume, destroyed the capital value of those permits. And that's not really fair. It's not fair to the people that bought those permits with an set of economic assumptions that went away capriciously. Understood, but the same is true with introducing a unregulated competitor into a regulated one. Really tough. So I'm torn. I want a way forward as well that does the best we can with a bad situation that hurts a limited number of people but hurts them deeply. So I suspect that the best way to do it is, as Mr. Dunbar has suggested, to come back and deal with that as a separate issue. But I'm going to vote in favor of the amendment simply because I gave my word I would. And I'm one of those old fogies that tries to stick by your commitments. So, anyways, I will be supporting this. I'm in favor of the long term of what Mr. Trainee wants to accomplish, and I gave my word, so that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Dyson. Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee. Just one quick point. I've already said most of what I want to say. I guess 2 points. One, as everyone here knows, we don't have control over Uber and Lyft or the fact that they are not regulated. We passed a regulatory framework in 2017 that was subsequently obviated by the legislature, and I think it would have addressed some of our concerns. But this notion of flooding the market, that implies that the government is sort of forcing these out the door. But that's not actually the case. They've been holding auctions and they've been getting purchased. And I think they've been being purchased even for more than they're initially offered for. They're offered for $1,900 or $2,000, whatever the minimum price is. And they've been going for more than that. I suspect that number will probably continue to creep downwards until it's truly limited entry. But again, I just don't think that this idea that they're being forced out the door is accurate. People are purchasing them. And it's true that some of them decide to give them back or they can't handle the operation of the taxi cab. But that's like any other industry. People get into the restaurant business and then they fail. Or they start a coffee stand and they fail. And I'm in favor of allowing more drivers to the opportunity to purchase a permit and make a go of it, and some of them will succeed and some of them won't, rather than artificially restrict the ability to do so. Thank you, Mr. Trainee.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Croft, sir.
Yeah, I've been asking in Mr. Evans' ordinance and in the public debate about whether to repeal it, and in my discussions with the public and with taxicab owners, a version, I guess, of Mr. Dyson's question. Why is this such a matter of public safety or something that it is difficult or impossible for people to figure out on their own that the government should set the number of these permits? And I have not yet got a satisfactory answer. I continue to believe that this ought to be a industry that competes through the market, and that it survives. It's on that basis. It's difficult because we're moving from one that was protected, and people made investment decisions on it. That's why I thought a 5-year phase-out made sense. I guess for the maker of the amendment, does this make any change in code or simply has the study?
It makes no change in code. It simply requires a convenience study to be done before any new permits are issued.
I believe you're reading the wrong amendment, Eric.
There's amendment number 2.
Is that 1 or 2?
I have 2. I think I'm reading.
I think we're talking about 1, right?
We're talking about 1 right now.
Yeah.
All right. Does
Croft?
1 make any change to code?
No. 1 returns it back to what it was originally, which required a convenience necessity study to be done before any new permits were issued. That's all this does. Anything else, Mr. Croft?
No.
Mr. Constant?
Thank you. I'm going to wait to hear from Mr. Gates, if you don't mind.
Thank you. Mr. Gates?
Yes, just a point of clarification. Amendment number 1, I drafted both of these. Amendment 1 does change the code. It deletes and replaces section 112030 by replacing it going back to the previous public convenience and necessity closed system. That's what Amendment 1 does.
Yeah.
Amendment 2 doesn't make any code changes, but it does direct the Transportation Commission to do the market conciliation study.
That's why I said, Dean, it has to have the study done.
Current code says that that study won't be done until after the 5-year phase-in. It won't occur until 2021. So Amendment number 2, Amendment 1 would actually get rid of that whole thing and replace it going back to the old closed system. Amendment 2 would just say, instead of 2021, do the study this summer as soon as practicable and report to the Assembly before the end of July. And then by the end of July, the Assembly would have time to pass another ordinance based on what the Transportation Commission's report says, if they wanted to make any changes to the open entry system or closed permit system or so forth. And that timing is important because they are supposed to begin the system of the next round of permit bidding after September 1st.
Thank you, Dean.
So, Mr.
Amy?
Chair.
Chris?
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry I asked to go after Dean. I just want to make sure he got his clarification in there. So amendment number 1, which we're discussing now, puts a temporary hold on issuing of any new licenses and then initiates the convenience and necessity study. So that one does two things essentially. And again, back to it as a matter, when we talk about market forces and market driven and all of these things, I have to go back to the idea that 4 years ago, an individual who wanted to buy a cab license had to spend over $100,000, and now the market shows that it's dropped 90% to $10,000 or so, less even. And so nobody, I believe, contemplated that that kind of a change would happen in that quick of a time. And so we have essentially pulled the carpet out from under everybody who made these investments over the last 20 to 40 years in this town. And I think we have a responsibility to equalize the market over time and not drive a crash with bad policy. I support all of these changes in the main motion, but this is an important backstop, I think, that we can implement right now to stop and take a breath and see what we've actually done.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Ms. Nabowski?
Are you letting Forrest go last?
What?
I was waiting to see what Forrest was going to say.
I haven't taken him out of the queue yet.
Okay.
Now I have.
Thank you. A couple of observations. I've been in this process since the very beginning, and I was one who supported going to a free market type of situation. One of the biggest challenges I had going with a free market, open market concept was the fact that I felt the taxi industry was overregulated, and I thought we should diminish those regulations. But I want to go back to something Mr. Dyson said, and I'd like for Mr. Falsey to weigh in because he was here during that time. We had a lot of discussions about the potential taking argument, and that was, Mr. Falsey, can you expound on that and why we phased it in? Can you help me here? For those members who weren't here, I think it'll give us some context.
Right, through the chair, I'd have to pull some of the old notes, but there was an in-the-air conversation for some time about whether localities that had limited entry systems could transition to an open market system without incurring some kind of financial consequence for quote-unquote devaluing the originally issued permits. Before the Assembly acted on former Assembly member Bill Evans' ordinance, I think it was informed by an emerging number of judicial decisions which suggested that that concern was not a viable one, in meaning that there was a decision out of the Minnesota area and I think one out of Illinois, and then there was a celebrated jurist, Judge Posner, who issued a pretty definitive decision that there was no cognizable takings claim to bleeding out more permits in moving to an open entry system.
So thank you, Mr. Falsey. I think that gives a little bit of help for those members who are starting to hear that discussion come back, because this was something that was robustly discussed, I think, over a couple of months. And this body, though the faces may be different, the body deliberated on that specific question, deliberated on whether we were going to go to an open market system, and the ultimate decision was yes. With that said, the taxi industry was not happy with that decision. They put it before the voters, and the voters resoundingly rejected going back to a closed market system. So again, now we're coming back to redebate this for a third time. And just a year ago, I believe it was it last year we had this discussion in front of the voters. I don't see how we've had substantial difference in the discussion. We had these same arguments last year that people were saying their permits were getting devalued. The market was getting tougher because Uber and Lyft are here. Again, Uber and Lyft are here. We're not regulating Uber and Lyft. Clearly, that's being done at the state level. But for us, the discussion becomes, are we going to stick with what we said we were going to do 2 years ago? Are we going to stick with what the voters just told us to do a year ago? Or are we going to change our minds again? That's the question. So I don't want to confuse things. I wanted to lay out the timeline. For me, I'm going to, I clearly am a free market type of person. I believe in those principles, and I will be supporting Mr. Dunbar fully in this resolution.
Mr. Wilton.
I just want to speak on something that Assemblyman Constant said, that we had not expected to see the value of the permits drop so quickly, and in fact they have not dropped nearly as quickly as I expected. I expected that they would approach very quickly the roughly $2,000 that they would be when we're fully open entry. So the quick decrease in the value of the permits was not unexpected.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Gates, any final comment from you? Have you in the queue?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted one other point about Amendment 1. It won't affect permits that have been issued in the phase-in the past 2 years. We've already had 30 to 35 issued. Those won't be taken back. The top of page 2 has a sentence saying those permits issued as of the date that this ordinance passes shall not be reduced, the number of permits. So the ones issued so far in the phase-in period aren't going to be affected by Amendment 1.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. Mr. Dyson, sir?
Yeah, please be patient with me. I'd like to have some, if we adopt one of these two amendments, is that sufficient? Or are we going to consider both of them? And I'd like to have somebody quickly explain the difference here. If you
Chris?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Sensing that the Amendment 1 language was going to be close, I didn't know if it would pass or not. In my opinion, I support it because I think we should be measured in our action and the outcomes of our actions. But say it doesn't pass. We heard Mr. Dunbar say that Mr. Trainee should bring this forward in a separate amendment. But in order to make a meaningful amendment, I think we need the study that will share with us the actual impacts of what happened with the change in the marketplace, which is the what's that language?
Convenience and necessity?
Yeah, the needs and necessity study. And so what the second amendment does is it strips away the stopping of the issuing of permits, which is the movement towards the free market, but at the same time it initiates the study to be done by July 31st, asks the commission. So that it's just a middle-of-the-road step. So if we can't get the support to go all the way, maybe we can get the support to go halfway and get the study. So if we come back, we have data.
So it's Plan B.
It's my Plan B.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to comment on this before we vote? See no one. We'll now vote on amendment number 1. What?
Did John already go?
John already went.
I'm sorry.
Let's vote on amendment number 1. John?
No.
Please vote. What? Mr. Steele, we need your vote. That fails, 4-7. Mr. Constant.
Thank you. I would move amendment number 2 to AO 2018-6S. As I previously mentioned, this does not change the phase out or the phase in of the new permitting, however you want to speak on that. But what it does do,
on that.
thank you. It changes page 45, line 24, adding a new AO section that reads, the Anchorage Transportation Commission shall, as soon as practicable and regardless of the time period directives in code, commence a taxi cab market conciliation study as described in AMC, et cetera. The Commission is to consider whether the current taxi cab permit issuance should be modified, abandoned, or maintained, make recommendations as to whether the muni should proceed with transition to open entry in 2022. The Commission shall submit its report and recommendations to the Assembly no later than July 31, 2018.
Okay. Comments from Assembly members. It's been moved and seconded.
I have a comment.
Yes, John.
Good question. I get 2 questions. One, do we know the cost of the study, and is 3 months enough time to do it?
Mr. Musser, do you know the answer to that question? You've been involved in it numerous times.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. To answer that question, to do the job being requested, it would be impossible to complete that by July 31. The last study in 2016 led between the commission public hearings and the staff time associated with compiling the information and working with the industry. It took close to 7 months to prepare that. And so I would ask we could do our best to get it back to you by October. And with that, it would be important to note that under the existing ordinance for issuing the permits, it requires 60-day notice to be completed by December 1st, or 30 days before the end of the year. So it may, if we accommodate, I guess, our request for the commission to have more time, we might have to affect that date and move that date slightly pending Assembly review.
Mr. Constant, question for Mr. Musser?
Actually, I was in from before.
You want to ask him any questions on this?
Well, he said the answer is through October, I think, and so that's an additional 3 months. But in my opinion, if we need to make that as an amendment, I would make that as an amendment. But the bottom line is, I would like information, actual real analysis done on the question of what is the impact of this. And I think it's a fair middle road.
What's the cost to do this, Mr. Musser?
Through the chair, we have worked with really the industry and the public and other agencies, but we've done this entirely in-house using existing resources.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dunbar, on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee. So one of the impacts of my ordinance, regardless of whether this amendment passes, is it lowers the fees on permits. And that is the primary revenue stream for Mr. Musser's office. And So we are going to reduce his budget essentially, and it's going to require probably subsidies from elsewhere in our government, which is not unusual. The permit center isn't self-sustaining. Most of our agencies aren't self-sustaining. But I just want people to be cognizant of that. We are going to be increasing what we ask of him to do in the next 6 months. Hopefully it's 6 months. While simultaneously my ordinance will be reducing his budget. So again, we just have to, I'm not opposed to the amendment. I agree with the idea of trying to gather more data. And I expect what will come out of that study is urging us to slow down the issuance of permits. I think it's a policy question that really can't be answered by a study as to whether or not you should have an open market or a closed entry system. That's a sort of philosophical and policy call that really doesn't, I don't think the study can answer that question. But it might lead to it slowing down. I'm not opposed to at least gathering the data. I just want us to be cognizant that we don't overburden that office without enough funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Mr. Constant.
Yeah, thank you. And I would agree with your assessment there that I can't imagine that the study would actually make a conclusion on the policy question, that it just would hopefully give us data to analyze and understand the impacts of what we've done. And so do I need to make an amendment to the amendment? So I would amendment to, got so much paper.
No later than date.
At the end there, instead of saying no later than July 31st, say no later than December 1st, 2018.
I'll second that.
On that amendment, is there any objection to that amendment? John?
No objection.
Ask unanimous consent to the amendment? See no objection, that's approved. Okay, we've got in front of us, Mr. Constant, a date showing up December 1st, 2018. Mr. Constant?
I hope you all support this.
Okay. Other comments from Assembly members? Okay, let's vote on it. Amendment number 2. John?
No.
Please vote. That was approved 9-2. Okay. Now we have the amended document in front of us. Mr. Dunbar, anything before we vote on this?
No, I guess as closing comments here, I want to thank people in the industry that reached out to me from the beginning and helped craft these ideas. I didn't include everything that was asked for, and obviously the big ask that Mr. Trainee tried to put in tonight failed. But I do think that this ordinance reduces the regulatory burden and certainly reduces the fees. So I'm hopeful that it will allow the industry to be more competitive. And with that, I also think that we need to vote on it tonight. Enough of this, delaying. Right, because I'm sympathetic to the fact that every time we bring this up, the industry turns out and we're sort of holding them in limbo. And I think it's time we made this certain. And hopefully this will be the last taxi ordinance for a while.
Mr. Croft, on the amendment in front of us, as amended.
Or the bill as amended, the ordinance as amended, yeah.
Sorry, Eric.
I understand, because it's been explained to me in a number of meetings how difficult and painful this process is. As I said, I can't justify the limited entry system anymore, but feel the disruption that comes from losing it. I have heard the best arguments that have been presented have been, yeah, well, you have now you're letting open entry, and we're competing with an Uber situation on not a fair playing field, and that's true. We tried to make it more equal, and that was preempted by the state. The second criticism that I think is very valid is you're allowing an open entry system on the permits, and it's still essentially a monopoly or monopoly-like on dispatch, and we're caught in the middle. And so lately in those conversations, I've been asking the question, should we change that as well? That is, should we just allow you to self-dispatch, you to put an ad in the paper or on the web that says you're Joe's and you're the best and here's why they should call you at this number? I urge people, instead of just applause, but so it's easy to find us on the web. You can email me easily. Tell me why that is a good or a bad idea to do. I know enough now of seeing this that there'll be a lot of pushback from dispatch, maybe others, but it seems to me that that is an area where we can say, we know this is painful, we know that you don't like this, but we are trying to hear what we can do as this process continues. I voted for the amendment number 2, not for 1, which would sort of stop us in this process, but 2, to get more data. I think we should get that. It'll be difficult to figure out what we do. If it comes back and says there's a lot of disruption in this system as it goes from closed to open entry, I think we knew that would happen. But I am interested in the other and urge you to communicate with me on it.
Thank you. Mr. Constant, sir.
Thank you. A couple of things to the gentleman in the audience asking why they can't be heard. We had 2 public hearings, and those public hearings were closed, so the opportunity was before. Mr. Dunbar, I want to say thank you. This is a ton of hard work, and it's loveless work. You get beat up on both sides, and it's a good product, and it was a lot of contemplation. And it's the devil's dilemma, right? There's no good option. And to the members of the public who are impacted by this, there is a primary election in August and there is a general election in November, and take it out on the people who did this to you, which is the legislature. And I'm not kidding, because they took the ability for us to regulate your competitors off of the table. And I am just sickened to my gut that they have taken from Anchorage the power to do this. And so please take your, whatever it is you're feeling, to them and throw the bastards out.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Dabowski, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So
That's it. It's enough.
When I was pumping gas in the cabs as a kid, throw me out.
Security.
I'll leave, Mr. Trainee, because I respect you, but I want to say something. You don't let us reiterate. The things that you people are saying are not true. I'll leave.
Yeah, right.
I'm not trying to be it, but they're not true. It's never been closed. It's
Thank
been
you.
a needs and necessity hearing. In 1994, it used to be based on how many residents were here. 2,400 residents for one cab, which is 125. You should talk to Mark Begich and Pat Amney in 1994 when they rewrote this ordinance. If you want to go back, Amy Domowski, and follow what was done.
Thank you, sir.
Do the real study. Yeah. Do the real study. We're going to see what happens. Yeah.
We need to maintain order, please.
Whatever. There's
Ms.
going to be
Dabowski.
disruption.
If you would like to, my name is George Goker. I control cab permit number 59. There's probably nobody else in this audience that has more history in this industry. In 1994, when Mark Begich wrote that ordinance sponsored by Pat Amney, everything that they did, they guaranteed us with our transferable permits, you took away from us. Right now, I'm behind in my mortgage. My electricity got cut off for the first time, and you want to put more cabs out there? We can regulate marijuana industries against federal law, but you people, for liability, and William Trader, for those people of you that don't know, first time somebody goes down here and has like a diabetic thing or a high blood pressure thing, and you people know that these Ubers should be regulated, you're going to be liable, just like William Trader in the $10 million lawsuit.
Thank you,
the
sir.
sun rises on every one of us equally, and I'm really sorry that this is upsetting to me, but these permits, it's always been open. Needs and necessity determined, 6, 7, whatever they need.
Actually, in 94, it was Pat Amney, Mark Begich, and myself. I was here.
But the thing is they guaranteed it when they went to
Ms. Dabowski.
thank you, Mr. Chair.
Go on out of the meeting. We need to finish this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to, I want to say something, specifically to my last vote. I don't really think it takes writing a code and making an amendment to ask the Transportation Department to give us the data. That's why I voted against it. I think it was redundant and unnecessary. But to Mr. Dunbar's point, or I'm sorry, Mr. Croft's point, I'm totally in agreement. I've thought for a long time a big part of the issue needs to be to deal with dispatch. I think that, I've been in other parts of the country where cabs are able to self-dispatch, and I think that's a big part of the issue here. And I think, I've said it all along, I think the cab industry in Alaska, specifically in Anchorage, is over-regulated. And I think for them to be competitive, I think you need to be able to give them that flexibility. And so that kind of idea, Mr. Croft, I'm totally on board with. I think it's really it's like the elephant in the room that nobody's dealing with. And I think it needs to be dealt with. So if you decide you're considering going down that road, I'm very interested in it. But I do want to say, Mr. Dunbar, this has been probably the most passionate topic I've ever dealt with on the Assembly, next to AO 37. And there's no question, we're dealing with people's livelihoods, and we're dealing with a system that was set up probably before you and I were born. But the fact of the matter is, when you look at the market and you look at how it is, it is going to be difficult to transition, no matter how you transition to an open market. It's going to be difficult. And I think the data will show us exactly that. I don't anticipate the Transportation Commission is going to be, they're not the body to make the policy call. This is the body. But that's why I say Mr. Musser can give us this information. I personally just didn't think it was necessary to put it in the law for him to have to do a study by a certain date. I think he'll give it to us. But overall, I think this is a concept that if you can open up the dispatch, I think that would probably be a pressure relief valve that will help some of these dispatchers with cost.
Thank you, Mr. Muskie. Mr. Traney?
Thank you. I'll be voting against this. We screwed this thing up 2 years ago in 2016 when we started messing with it, trying to reform the taxi industry. What we did in '94 worked. It created an industry here. These people were employed. Now what you're doing, you've got people that aren't making minimum wage, and this just doesn't work. We can blame the legislature all we want. They're guilty of that. But we've also done this by flooding the market ourselves. So I'm opposed to this. I will not be voting for it. Probably be on the losing side, but that's all right. That's happened before. Mr. Dunbar. John?
Hi. A couple of things. One is, along with, I guess, the rest of you, the work on this has been really extensive and outstanding. Been through several committee meetings, work sessions, individual conversations with people. I met with groups. Plus, we've had 2 public hearings, and it appears part of a third one this evening. But through that process, there were dramatic changes in this in response to industry input. And ultimately now the ordinance lightens the regulatory burden on the drivers. It gets the city out of setting fares, and it allows the use of new technology. And kind of addressing the points that Eric and Amy mentioned on dispatch, there is no constraint on the number of dispatchers through us. I mean, I think the barrier to entry is the cost of getting into it. But this ordinance allows digital dispatch, which would be cheaper to get into and would allow small groups of cabs to get together and dispatch themselves. So that also should be, an improvement for the industry. So I do support this, and I do thank Forrest for taking it on. It was a lot of work.
Forrest, you're next.
Yeah, just very quickly, my last comments, and I wasn't going to get in the queue, but then you said you were going to vote against this, Mr. Traney, which was disappointing. And the reason is because I understand that this doesn't go as far as you wanted to respond to industry demands, but I don't want it to be perceived as an anti-taxi industry ordinance. It's not. It lowers fees, it lowers regulations, it tries to help them be more competitive. Doesn't go as far as some of them wanted, I get that, but it is, I think, unequivocally a net positive. So I urge my colleagues to support it. Thank you.
If there's no other comments, let's vote on this one. As amended. John, you're first.
Yes.
Please vote. Ten to 1, that's approved. Thanks for your work on that, Mr. Dunbar. Item 14A is the next item in front of us, Resolution Air 2018-60, resolution approving administrative agreement IBW, administrative agreement IBW AA number 2018-1 between Municipality of Anchorage and the National Brotherhood of Electrical Workers Local 1547, agreeing to no layoffs due to sale of municipal light and power, Public Relations Department. There's accompanying a same memorandum, AM 128-2018. Anybody wishing to testify on that item, please come forward. State your name for the record. Spell your last name and tell us what town you live in. Welcome, sir. On this issue.
On this issue.
Okay.
This is an agreement with ML&P and the union. It's a contract. I have a contract with the city to liquidate ML&P's surplus. Will that contract carry on? Because Chugach has a no-bid contract, a good old boy contract, and the other auctioneer has had it for the last 20 years. This is not transparent. If the union's going to speak up and want this contract transferred, what about all the other contracts with ML&P? So I'm going to support this for the union because ML&P is my neighbor, even though they just lost a suit to me over the homeless. They're good neighbors. Those are good workers there, and they should be carried over if, in a remote, hopefully, possibility that Chugach, ML&P sells the Chugach, that contract should be honored, as well as the auctioneering contract and any other contracts that ML&P has entered into. Are there any questions?
There don't appear to be any. Thank you, sir.
I'm not done. Do I got 3 minutes, Dick?
I can make it shorter.
No, you just say. Had a little
1 minute 46.
You had a little trouble. You got so upset about guns, I almost had to call security on you and have you removed.
So
I'll see you at the end of the meeting.
You take care. Anybody else wish to testify on this issue, please come forward. Hearing and seeing no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion from assembly members. John?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay. As soon as the clerk gets back here.
Sorry, I don't, just borrowed her.
John said yes. So let's bring up the screen so the rest of us can vote on it.
Who moved?
Who moved and seconded that? I'll look.
Who seconded?
Felix seconded it, right?
Okay.
I moved it.
Okay.
Felix second.
Are we all right?
We're good.
Okay. Please vote. Who?
Mr. Weddleton?
Mr. Wilton, she needs your vote on this one.
Yes.
There you go. That is approved by the body, 10-1. Next item in front of us is item 14B, Ordinance AO 2018-24, Ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly, amending Anchorage Municipal Code Sections 1.35.010, 13.20.020, 3.20.070, and 3.30.012 to update provisions regarding the principal, executive personnel, and board commission members required to take and subscribe to the oath of office. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State Jim clear for the record. Spell your last name, if you would, please. Hearing and seeing no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Discussion from assembly members. We'll now vote. John, you're first.
Yes.
Who? Got it. That's approved 11-0. Next item in front of us is item 11C, Ordinance AO 2018-25, an ordinance authorizing long-term lease between the Municipality of Anchorage as lessor and Skytrek Alaska Flight Training LLC as lessee of Lot 5, Block 5, Merrillfield replat, located on the south side of Merrillfield Drive. Merrillfield Airport, accompanying a same memorandum, AM 196-2018. Anybody wishing to testify on this item, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record. Spell your last name, if you would, please. Anyone at all. Hearing and seeing no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded. Discussion from assembly members. We'll now vote. John, you're first.
Yes.
Please vote. That's approved 11-0. Next item in front of us is item 14D, ordinance AO 2018-26, ordinance authorizing a revocable land use permit to Girdwood Community Club, Inc., a nonprofit corporation, for the premises on dedicated park land at 124 Eagleoff Drive in Girdwood at less than fair market value, real estate department, and accompanying same memorandum, AM 197, 2018. Anybody wish to testify on this issue, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Move to second. Discussion from assembly members. Okay, John, you're first to vote.
Yes.
Please bring up, there we go.
Mr. Steele, Mr. Croft.
Mr. Steele, you need to vote. Mr. Croft.
Ms. Dombrowski.
Ms. Dombrowski, you need to vote on this item, ma'am. That's approved unanimously, 11-0. Next item in front of us is item 14E, ordinance AO 2018-27, an ordinance of the municipality of Vancouver, Alaska, providing for and authorizing and approving a short-term borrowing program for the municipality in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $708,000 for the purpose of providing funds for capital improvements to Merrill Field, Finance Department Public Finance. There's an accompanying same memorandum, AM 2003-2018. Anybody wish to testify on this item, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record, spell your last name, and tell us what proud town you live in. Hearing and seeing no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Discussion from assembly members. We'll start voting. John, you're first.
Yes.
Please vote. That was approved 10-0. We're now down to item 14F, which is Resolution AR 2018-90. Remember from earlier we had item 9B1, I think it was. So we'll deal with this one first, then deal with the other one. So we have in front of us Resolution 2018-90, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly stating its protest pending public hearing and final action on the transfer of ownership of restaurant/eating place liquor license number 5191 with restaurant designation permit for John Bond Group, LLC, doing business Noodle World Restaurant located.
Waive reading.
Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name clear for the record, spell your last name, and tell us what part of town you live in. What? What did you say? Public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion from assembly members.
Did you hit your button?
It won't let me.
No discussion. John, you're first.
Yes.
Please bring up the screen, ma'am. There. That's approved 10-1. 10-0, sorry.
9B. Oh, we have to come back to it. I totally lost it.
Now, we do need to go back to item 9B1. Because we dropped that one down at your request. Do you want to make a motion on 9B1?
Move to approve.
Discussion from assembly members? Okay. John, we're voting on this now. Item 9B1.
Okay, I just want to make clear, so a yes vote means we protest it.
Right, but as soon as they cure any problem,
With conditions.
the clerk's office can take care of it.
Right, okay, the vote is yes.
Okay, please vote. That is approved. 11-0. Next one in front of us is item 14G, Resolution AR 2018-95, resolution of the Municipal Assembly approving an alcohol special land use permit for a package store use and license number 2808 for TCCH Inc., doing business as Anchorage Wine House.
Waive reading.
B3 District. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record. Spell your last name if you would, please. Hello, sir.
Hello, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the Assembly, my name is Tom McGrath, MC, Grath, and I'm a member of the Spenard Community Council. We've seen with the MOU requirements for the marijuana licenses that conversations can work out problems before they start. Fairview and Mountain View has successfully started this MOU process for package store licenses. Spenard in the past has had restrictions written and voted on for different package stores, but we've never gone to the length that Fairview and Mountain View has, and we think it's a good thing. So Spenard and Mr. Cheng have developed an MOU, and Eric, I believe, has copies of those, a copy of that. We think it's a very positive thing for the community as well as the industry that everybody's on the same page. I would really like to thank Mr. Croft for facilitating this, and even going back to the time that he was on the legislature, changing the laws so that this could be done. So I think it's a good thing, and if you have any questions, I'm available. Thank you.
No period, Benny. Thank you, sir. Good to see you again, Tom.
Tom, thank you for all your work. Do you mind? Yeah, just real quickly. I just got from Jay, the president of the Spenard Community Council, the signed agreement. So that's the one that you helped draft?
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
There are no other questions. Thank you, Tom. Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward. Welcome, sir.
Good evening. Excuse me. Name is Talbot Chang, spelled C-H-A-N-G. I'm the petitioner for the application, as stated. And I know as a alcoholic retail owner, it comes with a great responsibility, and that is my intention to take on the responsibility and to follow the laws. Mr. Chair, at this point, I'd like to share two pictures with the Assembly members, if I could approach.
That's fine, sir. We'll pass it around. Thank you.
With the pictures, I just wanted to share with you the boutique venue that I have in mind for the new location. We want to be catering towards the wine connoisseurs throughout the town. We hope to be a destination store in town where we could attract wine connoisseurs from throughout the town. And the second photo would be our staff. They are nationally certified wine specialists. They have over 25 years of experience, and with their expertise, this is the type of business that I would like to run at this new location. Now, all three are not going to be at the single location. Matter of fact, one of the staff has gone independent since we started taking that picture 7 years ago. Anyhow, it is my intent to be responsible and to respond to the Spenard Community Council if there's any issue. And matter of fact, I have agreed to at the last Spenard Community Council meeting, I have agreed to attend their meetings at least 4 times a year for the first year, and so on. I intend to attend much more frequent we have established direct phone lines for any of the members to contact me if there is issue. And I have agreed to a few conditions, such as not to sell any miniature spirits under $1.50, not to sell fortified wines under $6, I believe, not to sell six-pack beers under $6. And there was another one that I faced me. Anyway, and that's what I wanted to present to you, and if there's any questions at this time.
Thank you, sir. Good timing. Any questions from Assembly members?
I did, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Croft.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you for your attendance at Spenard and for your willingness to work with them. So, yeah, in a memorandum of understanding that isn't signed in this copy, but I do have a signed copy that came over email. It was liquor products, 375 milliliter under 150, single-serving malt liquor, I think under 4, cheap wines under 6, and then 6 packs of beer under 6. Mm-hmm. It was my understanding from your prior presentations and your discussions with Spenard, that really wasn't your business model anyway. You weren't. I guess my question is that going to affect your business very much, or you weren't planning really on selling or concentrating on those anyway?
No. Not at all. I mean, you're correct. It's not my business concept.
And I've seen your photos of your other operations, and they look to be good ones. And I think this agreement helps. Is that Dan in the picture from
yes, Dan Piper?
Is he one of your employees now?
He is.
Well? Yeah. Okay, so you don't think that this agreement is going to be too onerous on your business?
No.
And yeah, I guess that's it. Thank you and welcome to the neighborhood, and we hope it works out as everyone expects.
Thank you.
Any other questions from Assembly members? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to testify on this item, please come forward. Seeing and hearing no one, public testimony is called. So what's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Croft. We've got it. Do we have a second on that motion to approve?
Mr. Peterson.
Okay. Mr. Croft.
Been advised by the clerk that I should move to incorporate the memorandum of understanding between Anchorage Wine House, Talbot Chang, and the Spenard Community Council dated April 4th, 2018 into Assembly Resolution number AR 2018-95. And the reason for
I would
that...
do what the clerk tells you to.
Yeah, there's two reasons to do that. One, the clerk told me to, and the other is that it has it in the record for the amendment that follows.
Any objection to what Mr. Croft would like to see happen, adding this to the record? Not seeing any objection, that's approved. We now have your amendment, Mr. Croft.
Right.
Amendment number 1.
The amendment simply says that the parties, or that the licensee agrees that he'll have an ongoing memorandum of understanding, either this one or subsequent ones. And Mr. Constant, other Assembly members have been thinking about or developing this, certainly not for every licensee in Spenard. Spenard has a lot of them, but for liquor stores in our area and maybe bars that have particular records of problems, you have that agreement. It has a couple of advantages, I think. It takes us out of the details of the conditions. It allows more flexibility. As I've been going through all the conditions on all the liquor licenses, trying to bring that back, and Mandy's been doing a lot of great work on that, it just became apparent that while I think we did a good job of imposing the appropriate conditions at the time when we did it, we didn't do a very good job of monitoring those or making sure they were still relevant. And community councils can play that role for us and come back and only when agreement breaks down. And the caution that Representative Senator, I guess, Dyson brought forward in a prior discussion that, but that only works if you have functional community councils. I've been around a long time. Spenard's really been functional for forever, and is particularly so now. The attendance is way up, and so I think this meets all the criteria. It's an appropriate limitations. They're not too onerous. This business can do it. You have a community council that's functioning and can monitor it. So for all those reasons, I'd ask for support.
I'll second his motion, or his amendment.
I know. Thank you, Amy. Appreciate that. Any comments on the amendment before we vote on it? Let's vote on his amendment number 1. John?
Yes.
Please vote. That's approved 11-0. So we have the original document as amended in front of us. Eric, anything else on your amendment as your item in front of us as amended?
No.
Okay. Let's vote on it then. John, you're first.
Yes.
Please vote. It's approved 11-0. Next item in front of us is item 14H, Resolution AR 2018-96, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving a marijuana license special land use permit for Popeyes Emporium H LLC, a marijuana retail sales establishment with license number M10252.
Waive reading.
Doing business. Thank you. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name, clear for the record, spell your last name, and tell us what town you live in. John, there's nobody testifying yet. Do you want to tell us what happened at the committee meeting on Popeyes?
Yeah, we looked at this carefully last week at the Community and Economic Development Committee, and we recommended approval.
Okay. Anybody wish to testify on this item? Hearing and saying none, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion from assembly members. Let's vote on it then. John, you're first.
Yes.
Please vote. That's approved 10-1. Next one in front of us is item 14I, Resolution AR 2018-97, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving a marijuana license and special land use permit for Alaska Wild Coyote, Inc. as a marijuana cultivation facility with license number M12125, doing business as Alaska Marijuana Gardens, AMG, located at 838 Bonanza Avenue, Taku Campbell Community Council, case number 28-0029, Municipal Clerk's Office and Planning Department. Is accompanying a same memorandum, AM 211-2018. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward, state your name, clear for the record, spell your last name, and tell us what town you live in. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing none, public testimony is closed. John, tell us what happened with this one at the committee meeting.
We looked at this at the Community and Economic Development Committee last week, and we did vote for approval, though not unanimously, which is unusual. If I could add, I also went over after and spoke to Jeannie Schenderline, who was a neighbor, and she had problems with the property previously and was concerned about this operation moving in. And I guess I don't want to speak for her, but immediately after that, the next day, or actually later that day, the operation in there that she had concerns with completely packed up and moved the vehicles out from the street and the property. And I think she is more comfortable after talking with the applicant as well, that it will not be quite the problem that she anticipated.
Thank you.
And I recommend approval.
Thank you. Armando, would you come forward? Got a question for you. At the committee meeting, you said you were not going to request a manufacturing permit or retail license. Is that still your intention?
Our big intention, the retail was the one that I felt like a couple of the members did not want us to do. And we do not have to move forward with the retail. The manufacturing, do you feel like we would still like to pursue that, but not the retail? because the retail basically would not have would bring more foot traffic and people and stuff like that to the area. The manufacturing shouldn't bring any foot traffic or any people there or anything like that, you know? So we do not plan on doing retail there anymore.
Okay.
If that's your question.
Another question for you.
Yes,
Were you
sir.
involved with Fantasies when they had the problem of the wage and hour problem they had? Were you the
worked-
manager of that at that time?
I worked there at that time.
Were you the manager of it when they had the problem with the state wage and hour board?
I was not like the manager, no.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Comments from assembly members? Mr. Constant?
Yeah, thank you. I was only on the committee meeting by telephone, but this was an interesting committee meeting to me in that the petitioner's neighbor came forward to complain about their operation, but didn't have any germane complaints about anything specific that their operation would propose that fell outside of what's allowable under the code. And so what the neighbor was asking for was essentially for us to, in a blanket way, not allow this business because she doesn't want it because it's going to make her operation more difficult. And I think that one thing that this industry has and will continue to prove is that they're going to comply with the rules. And we have yet only one or two examples of the many licensees who are playing footloose and fancy, but most of them, the far majority of them, are complying and in fact performing well within the rules and within their neighborhoods and being assets to the community. And so I just want to celebrate the success and also caution us not to, in certain cases, start to move away from the standards that we've set because somebody complains, well, it's going to make my neighborhood traffic worse, when all the studies show that it's not going to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And support this, please.
Mr. Dyson?
Yeah, thank you. My colleague, Mr. Constant, gave the wrong impression, I think, from the hearing we had in economic development. The neighbor who was concerned at least represented to us that she had missed much of the notification process and was playing catch-up in the whole business. And for me, and I think all of us, it wasn't clear until the meeting we had in economic development that there was going to be no retail going on there. And so her concern, she runs a yard and a supplier that has equipment and trucks in and out and so on. And she's had problems with people parking on the street that made it difficult for the heavy equipment moving in and out and so on. And I think all of us know that practically speaking, the notification processes don't work really well and so on. You got to be really very aware to keep up on everything that's going on. But that the fact that there was going to not be a retail operation with the resulting traffic, I think greatly assuaged her concerns. And so my sense at the end of it, that this person was not being unreasonable in going there. But I do appreciate Mr. Constant's reminder then and now that regardless of the feeling sorts of things, we need to go with what the law says. And yeah. And I agree with Mr. Constant that currently we don't have any data that shows that there's negative impacts in the neighborhoods, except people are downwind some days and so on. So anyways, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Dyson. Mr. Trainee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll actually be approving a cultivation license for this area, but I will not agree to a retail or manufacturing. I've driven down here. I would invite you to come with me. It's a dead-end street.
Yep.
It makes no sense to have a retail or manufacturing because it's a dead end and that's it.
Yep.
Doesn't work out.
Yep.
I will agree to a cultivation because that's no big deal. They can do that. And if there's smell and it bothers her, she can call up and complain. It's a complaint-driven system. But I go ahead and let them have a cultivation permit. If they keep in mind that if they come here for manufacturing or retail, I'm not going to agree with you on that. Mr. Constant.
Yeah, thanks. Mr. Trainee, I would just ask the question, and this is not really for an answer, but just to contemplate, what traffic really does a manufacturing business bring? It's 3 or 4 people in a given day. And so I, for one, would be willing in the future, if this works out and they prove to be a good operator, to consider that operation on its merits when it comes forward. Thank you.
I'm more than happy to take you down there, Mr. Compton, and show you the type of equipment they run through this area. I'm worried about people getting their cars ran over and getting hurt. I'll take you down there and show you what I'm
If I've been, I would love to go, sir. Thank you.
No problem. Any other comments on this license? Let's vote on it. John, you're first. Bring it up, ma'am.
Yeah.
Please vote. That's approved 10-1. You need to get with the MEA to make sure you get the power coming into there, because if you're going to have a bigger area, you need to make sure you got all the power you need, 3-phase power.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Next item in front of us is 14J, Resolution AR 2018-80, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, appropriating the proceeds from one or more grants when tendered in an amount not to exceed $14 million from the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, Airport Improvement Program, AIP.
Waive reading.
Thank you. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name clear for the record. Spell your last name if you would, please. And tell us what part of town you live in. Hearing and seeing no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion from assembly members.
Mr. Chair, I would just like
Mr.
to
Concept.
point out to everybody that I have voted on everything Merrifield has asked for tonight without a fight.
So that means you're not going to vote on this one?
No, I'm supporting it. I'm just
Okay.
making a point.
I decided to find out if you were planning on changing.
It's not all the time.
John, your vote?
Yes.
Please vote. And we appreciate federal dollars coming in. That's approved 11-0.
Mr. Chairman,
Ma'am,
just by way of disclosure, I don't think on item 14K I made a disclosure last time, so I just want to remind you, my husband's a fireman with AFD, and there's an allocation here to the fire department. I don't think I have a conflict, but I'm just saying it.
it's a ruling of the chair. You don't have a conflict. It's de minimis at best, ma'am. Public hearing on item 14K is now open. Resolution AR 2018-81, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, appropriating amount not to exceed $143,283 of area-wide general fund 101000. There we go. Fund balance to area-wide general fund 101000 to correct the 2017 debt service allocations
Waive reading.
to the office. Thank you. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name clear for the record. Spell your last name. Hearing and seeing no one, public testimony is closed. So what's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
I'll need a second.
Second.
Nope.
Discussion from assembly members. See no discussion. John, you're first. Bring it up.
Yeah.
Please vote. Who? What? Mr. Dyson, we need your vote, sir. That is approved by the body. Next item in front of us is item 14L, Resolution AR 2018-82, resolution of the municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, appropriating $585,693 as a contribution from the 2018 Maintenance and Operations Department, Facility Maintenance Division, Area-Wide General Fund 101000.
Waive reading.
Thank you. It's for major municipal facility upgrades and repair. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name, clear for the record, and spell your last name if you would, please. Hearing and say no one, public testimony is closed. So what's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Moved in second. Discussion from assembly members. Not seeing any. We're going to vote on this. John, you're first.
Yeah.
Please vote. That's approved 11-0 by the body. Next one in front of us is item 14M, Resolution AR 2018-83, resolution of the municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, MOA, appropriating $172,488.78 to the State Direct Federal Pass-Through Grants Fund 231900 State of Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities to be used in arterial roadway dust control. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record. Spell your last name if you would, please. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion from colleagues. Say no discussion. Forrest, you're first. Not Forrest. Saw your name on there. Sorry about that. John, you're first.
Yeah.
Please vote. That's approved, 11-0. Next one in front is item 14N, Resolution Air 2018-84, resolution of the County of Anchorage, Alaska, appropriating $511,780.80 to the State Federal Pass-Through Grants Fund 231900 to transfer responsibilities agreement with State of Alaska Transit Marketing Program. Public hearing is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name clear with the record and spell your last name if you would, please. Hearing and seeing no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve. Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion from assembly members. John, you're voting first.
Yes.
Please vote. That approves. That is approved. That deals with the balance of our agenda. We're now down to special orders. There are none. Reserved, there are none. Audience participation, item 17. Is there anything for 3 minutes that anybody would like to talk to us about that's not on the agenda? Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Ronald Leva, ALLEVA. I was at the last assembly meeting. We spoke about guns. AK-47. The reason I mention that, my worker, Robert Workman, was executed at the Lucky Wishbone along with his girlfriend, May, 4 years ago. And when the snow melted, I found a clip for a .223 with live ammo as well as a .45 with live ammo. And the reason I mention this is I turned in bullets with needles, and this is all in the neighborhood of the Brother Francis Shelter and Beans Cafe, of which I sent everyone one of these requests. Now, the reason I mention the bullets is because that's what comes over my fence, the needles. It's no longer just homeless where you want to help them. These are vermin and feral human beings that have no control, no respect. Recently, I found a gun case, which I brought to the mayor for a Ruger Blackhawk, which is a .357 or a .44. On Sunday, a street person pulled out a hand cannon, aimed it at another guy, and was going to shoot him. So I'm working 7 days a week. I call it in. The cops show up, and a woman cop. Now, I'm about 60 yards away. She says, "Get on your knees." I got on my knees. It was such a clear command. He didn't. He walked away and threw the gun into a pile of the clothes and tents and everything else. I was unable through the 911 to tell him where the gun was. But I'll tell you, if he would have turned around, he would have shot her. A new recruit. Get her a jock strap because she had some cojones. It was scary. But I'm scared. I'm in fear of my life. You cannot trust one of those people at Beans Cafe or Brother Francis. Now, I asked you all to drive by and see the filth and the disgust, and it continues. And nothing's being done about it other than a $145,000 salary for the executive director of Beans? Give me a break. $40,000 benefits in cars, and they got that filth outside that institution? I asked their security guard to come across and pick up the garbage. He told me that was APD's responsibility. I don't think so. I don't think that's what our police officers are for. Now, I'm at the end of my rope. You can suggest memorandums of understanding and dialogue, but no more, no mas. It's time to take action. You have to close those two institutions because their management is so poor.
Thank you, Ron.
Can I sum up?
Your time's up, sir.
Well, can I say one last statement?
One last statement.
Listen, every spring after Easter in the mountains looking over ML&P, the image of Jesus Christ comes out of the snow. Now, I verified it, and one member of the assembly can verify that. I'd like to share it with you because we're always being watched over, and I think he's keeping me alive, but not much longer.
Thank you, Ron.
Oh, you're more than welcome, Dick.
Take care.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward. Ma'am, it cannot be anything we discussed tonight. It cannot be on the taxi cabs if that's why you're here. It can't be anything on our agenda.
I thought this was open comments, that if I stayed, I could talk about anything I wanted to.
Within limits, ma'am. Go ahead.
Pardon?
So I would say.
Okay, in my experience, my name's Jackie Ransom. In my experience, when I was deliberating over an issue that dealing with different governments and different departments, that when the department heads, when I was talking, I would see a glaze over their eyes when I knew I wasn't being understood or when I knew I wasn't being heard. A lot of times when I come to this assembly, that happens. I've spent numerous times coming to this assembly. No one has really ever called me to ask me to further explain my positions in different things that I've come to testify about. I've come to learn that this assembly, a lot of things get decided behind closed doors, and there's really not much, 3 minutes is really not much time for the complex issues that you have to hear and decide about. I've dealt with 4 or 5 mayors in the course of my time in Anchorage about different things. I finally got to talk to this mayor just yesterday, and I saw that glaze again somewhat. I've jumped through hoops time and time again. Put it in writing, put it in writing, put it in writing. I've put it in writing. My group has spent over $100,000 in the last 5 years putting it in writing. Nobody has asked us, except when we put it in writing, I don't know which trash can it goes in, but it definitely doesn't go into any of the things that I talk about. It's not understood, and if it's misunderstood, nobody has ever asked or called me to clarify what is actually being requested. And I know you don't want to hear about what was done here tonight, but you know what? You've got a reaction, as Mr. Dabowski said, from the people, that what you guys decided. We're in a recession. Nobody talked about a recession on this board. We're in a very big recession. Businesses are closing, bars are closing. You know, people are leaving town. Business has changed. But I don't think anybody on this board recognizes that those things are happening. I even heard that you guys are going to introduce a $5,000 babysitting fund for future assembly people. I thought that wasn't discussed tonight. I think that's wonderful that you have $5,000, but you wreck everybody else's life. You know, $5,000 for babysitting where everybody else has to scramble just to pay rent.
I think that thing died tonight, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Dyson, question, sir?
I was going to make a comment. I appreciate your frustration and the reality of feeling like you're not heard. I would encourage you to particularly talk to the assembly person that represents where you live, And I certainly, and Ms. Demboski, we try to respond to every one of our constituents, and we miss sometimes. But that's the person that I think owes you the best, or at least an acknowledgement. And secondly, all public figures pay attention to being embarrassed in public. And if you write an editor letter to the editor and it gets published, talking about how you have been abused or not paid attention to, that'll get attention. Also, there's the Office of the Ombudsman, whose job is to be an advocate for those who don't have a good representation, and that's a pretty good one. And then the Equal Rights Commission.
Well, I've been to both of those offices, Mr. I appreciate those suggestions. I've been to both of those offices. Equal rights, you have to have certain criteria, which I don't think we fall under. I know.
They have a narrow definition of what's supposed to
Yes, that they can. But I've been to both those. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And Mr. Steele, we have talked to my representative a time or two, and he nods and smiles and votes the other way routinely after nodding and smiling. But I appreciate your suggestions, and I will follow up on writing to the editor more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. There are no other questions. Thank you. Anybody else wish to testify in front of the assembly? Anybody else? Go ahead.
My name is Eugene Carl Haberman. I represent myself. I live in the Metternich Valley, although I've lived approximately 20 years in the municipality of Anchorage, back in the years of Mayor George Sullivan, so quite a few years of experience. I follow the public process. The public process is not an appropriate decision made by the governing bodies, more like in the public interest. I do an audit of the public process. It came back in the picture after the election of April 3rd, 2012. Where more than 40% of the polling precincts ran out of ballots, even though they printed enough. Every election since it declared it illegitimate. But I'd like to talk briefly on one item. There was a report earlier this evening from Assembly Member Peterson in regard to the Ethics and Election Committee meeting that they had earlier, the last one. Quote, everything was in order at that meeting. Well, he knows better because I stressed the point. The minimum requirements of the Open Meetings Act is date, time, and location. President of that meeting was Assembly members Constant, Peterson, Croft, Dunbar were at that meeting. The location was noted at room 240, but it was held somewhere else. I was 6 minutes late. Assembly members before, some present here tonight, I asked a few minutes before the meeting started to call and say, you need to stop that meeting. That meeting happened anyway. I was there approximately 6 minutes after. But this is what goes on. Right in the election's going on, and you're holding meetings not in compliance with the minimum requirements, and that's the Assembly Ethics Election Committee. And where was it held? Over at that warehouse ship thing area. One of the, 4 or 5 locations for voting? Very appropriate. Microphones, can you hear anything? Small table in a warehouse area, very noisy. Is that the right thing to do? But this is standard. Over the years, I've witnessed non-compliance with the Open Meetings Law, non-compliance with a separate state law, providing a reasonable opportunity to the public to be heard. If I took this right now and look back in 2012, different members I see before me, except one I remember, Steele was there at that time, around those years. And I basically see the same image, non-compliance, looking the other way, conducting a policy of indifference. Now tonight, toward the end, I also saw a situation that there's a question that you're supposed to allow everyone to speak on audience participation on all issues, but that did not happen. That's new to me. But in closing this thing is, you've got election problems here. You've got tens of thousands of ballots that were returned. How can you call this a good election? There's a tragedy here, and you cannot certify this election without those questions being answered.
Sir,
and if they're not answered appropriately, can't certify it. Thank you.
Your time is up, sir. Thank you. There are no questions. Anybody else who wish to testify on any item, please come forward. Seeing no one, that portion of the agenda is closed. Assembly comments, Mr. Dyson. Mr. Bowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to pass a message along. Maybe Mr. Falsey can pass it along since Chief had to leave. I had word today on good authority from a very handsome firefighter in Anchorage that actually works at Station 11, that they're really excited about the 4th officer in Eagle River. And specifically, I was told Officer Hernandez was awesome today. And whatever he did, AFD was very impressed. So I just wanted to say that. And Mr. Chair, my husband informed me I didn't make a full disclosure that he's awesome. So there you go.
Thank you, Amy. I never doubted he was. Mr. Constant.
Nothing tonight. Thank you very much.
Mr. Peterson.
Well, despite some recent criticism, I thought the election went quite well. We had 80,000 people send in their votes. Participation in democracy is a good thing. I don't have a problem taking criticism if I have respect from the person who's criticizing me. But the person who is criticizing me, I have absolutely no respect for him. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Croft. Mr. Dunbar.
Nothing this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. France. Mr. Steele.
No item, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No comments.
Okay. John. Mr. Wilton, comments?
It's a very late meeting for me here. And I just wanted to say, I'm down here at this conference that is kind of broadly on walkability, but I'm here to learn about some of the ins and outs with federal highway funds. But I just want to mention I'm here with a team from Anchorage, Dana Moreno, who's with the municipality's DHSS department, Randy Ribble, who's a traffic engineer with the municipality, Joni Wilm, who's a planner with AMAT, and Rob Devassi, who's a Alaska Department of Transportation engineer, and Don Groth, who's with the State of Alaska DHHS. And we're working with a team looking at issues in Anchorage, and it's a lot of fun. I'm learning a lot. But there's no place like home. I'll be back Friday.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Just the body, our next meeting will be on the 17th of April, where we'll certify the election. So,
move to adjourn.
I agree with you. The election was amazing to see how many people got to vote that had not voted for years. The old system did not lend itself to it. And I got a bunch of calls from people that had a lot of heartache with going to a new system. Like I told them, wait till August and November, you get to vote in that same screwed up system again, because the state still has it. Let's get a motion to adjourn and get out of here.
Second.
We're adjourned.